Hello and welcome, everyone. We're doing Worldbuilding Wednesday. That's an intro. Today I have with me Dread Captain Clover and Mezzo Emrys, who's currently gnawing on the table. How's your table, Emrys?
No one brought me a high chair, so I'm doing my best.
Have you tried the table, Clover?
Not particularly interested.
Oh, okay. Are you sure? Because
are you too good for tables?
I can make you try. Hang on. I can make you try the table. I just have to find out which browser capture you're in. Here. Take a bite. Take a bite.
No, I don't want to eat the table. No.
How is the table?
Tastes like wood.
So once I get the browser audio capture set up, we'll be able to talk about world building. I have a couple of things we can talk about, but for starters, from what I understand, Clover, you were frothing when we were talking about things last week because you weren't able to talk. Was there anything in particular that you frothed about the hardest? I need to stop using that word.
There was so much.
So much froth.
So much froth. Fuck. I don't even know. I'm sure it'll come up again. I just partially it's because all of the issues that Mezzo has been talking about with her worlds are ones that I'm very aware of, and I'm just sitting here like, let me at him.
Yeah.
I know that you know about the issues with my worlds, but that hasn't solved them. So
yeah.
Well, which one was there? Was there an issue specifically that you remember offhand? Why is it not grabbing the music that I need?
No, unfortunately not at all.
No worries. That's fine. I am, well, I'd say I'm resourceful, but it's not switching the stream music over correctly, which is super cool and good. I would have liked...
Not cringe at all.
Not the least bit cringe. Looks like we're opening up Google Chrome, baby, even though I just downloaded... Well, I guess I can ask, what's up?
Are we planning on doing an Ask Emmy thing? I feel like that could be fun.
I mean, we could. I hadn't prepared anything in advance because I'm a fucking mess, but... But,
just like me for real.
Chat in general, if we have world building questions, we've got two very experienced world builders and one hobbyist world builder.
There's also a bunny.
No, wait, what? Who's the third one? Wait. But
I'm both world builders.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, gotcha. But if you have any questions, feel free to just interject with them. But let me run to my document of things that I had asked Mezzo last week, and we'll start there. Give me 2 seconds, because I have
we'll
it.
Clover review.
Yeah, exactly. Here it is. I'm renaming this so it's World Building Wednesday. There we go. Now I'll have things so I can throw shit in there throughout the week. Actually, this is a new question. This is a new question to both of you, because I wrote this one down right after last week's stream. Do you have a particular author that you look to for inspiration for world building? Or author, or whether it's a developer of a game or something like that. Is there somebody you look up to with that?
A really good question. You're gonna have to give me a second to
no
look
worries.
up the books that I've read because I don't fucking remember the author names.
That's
kind
fine.
of a weird one for me because I could definitely say that I very much so enjoy Brandon Sanderson stuff.
Yes.
His world building really good. As far as I can tell, his whole world universe he's doing is just an excuse to fit as much world building into one universe as possible.
I agree.
And so it's really good, and there's a whole lot of extremely good pieces that make up all of it. But at the same time, one of the first things I learned is, all right, you don't start with that. You build up to that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
Okay, so probably some of the authors that have stuck around in my head the most. Terry Pratchett. I've read a metric shit ton of the Discworld books, and
yes,
just So his books are primarily comedy, but he does a lot of really, really interesting world building to facilitate funny jokes, which is something that I appreciate a whole lot.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of bits and bobs in the Discworld series, like just the entire everything surrounding the figure of death and how death works, or the fact that I think light moves slower than on Discworld than it would on other worlds, and as a result there's a whole bunch of weird stuff that happens, just down to like individual cities. There's Ankh-Morpork, which is the main city where a lot of events in the book take place, and it's just kind of like this hodgepodge of like 17th 18th century London, 19th century New York, just the absolute worst city you could possibly imagine, where criminals control everything. But they instate there's still some sort of criminal law together, for example, where if you try stealing without a stealing license, you'll get your ass kicked by all of the gangs in the area. So that's something I really appreciate about his writing.
I appreciate the one book where the primary villain was a shopping mall.
Yes. Oh man, that was one that primarily took place in Ankh-Morpork, if I remember. And the idea is just like a shopping mall, like a modern day shopping mall suddenly shows up and slowly brings everyone into this sort of capitalist consumerist nightmare hellhole where none of that existed before, and slowly transforms how everyone around it reacts. Yeah. And it's just kind of like following a group of adventurers as I believe the adventurers are also part of a band, but as they are trying to deal with the shopping mall and eventually defeat it.
And I think this is also, is this related to the one where at the same time Death got fired from his job for not being impartial enough?
Believe so. I believe that is the one where I don't know if Death got fired from his job or he took a vacation. And what that ended up happening is you had a whole bunch of people who were supposed to die just not dying, and the concept of death no longer worked. And again, it's a comedy book, but just the fact that it's starting from this really interesting premise. Yeah. What if death was not around anymore? And just like, there's a bunch of people who are alive who really shouldn't be. And some of them are having a good time. A lot of others are just not at all.
And somehow, as a side effect of this, we end up having the local wizard council has to deal with the fact that now there is a shopping mall that is coming to life in existence. It's very funny.
Yeah, it's something I appreciate a whole lot about Terry Pratchett's writing specifically, just where it kind of shows that you don't need to tell a sort of super serious Lord of the Rings style high fantasy story if you're putting a lot of effort into world building. You know, the two aren't necessarily connected. You can put a lot of effort into the world building and have it have a completely different type of series. You could have this sort of loose magic fantasy, mostly comedy series, but still have the amount of effort that you put into world building show and affect the writing and help the writing.
Yeah, absolutely. Before I ask my next question, kind of stemming off of that, we have a hydrate or dihydrate. Hydrate or dihydrate. Everybody take a big drink of water. If you don't have water, go fill yours up, because when I drink real drink today, Ikari is our reason for drinking. So, do you think there are any worlds that, or any stories that would have benefited from more world building? Like, maybe not like I hated this and would have liked it if there was any world building, but like, you know, things that you maybe wanted to know more about the world, or didn't flesh it out enough. I know I'm asking big questions here, but I'm curious.
Big thinky.
Like, I think that personally, I think like I love dense high fantasy. Like, there's got to be a term for higher than high fantasy. You're slimmer, you know. Yeah, that one. You've got those ones that are so dense, and you've got Dune with its controversial prequels. You've got the Shannara series. Do you pronounce it Shannara or Shannara? Because I pronounced it Shannara, and the audiobooks pronounce it Shannara.
Pronounce it.
Why?
Because I don't know how to pronounce it.
Fair enough. But I think that with certain worlds, there's there's a series called I think it's like the 10,000 Kingdoms or 100,000 Kingdoms. Maybe it's just the 1,000 Kingdoms. Hang on. It's by a really good author, N.K. Jemisin.
100,000 Kingdoms.
Is it the 100,000 Kingdoms?
Yeah.
Is it? Okay.
It's a lot of kingdoms.
It is. That's a lot of kingdoms. But yeah, that world, and granted, I haven't read the most recent book, but I wanted to know. It was balanced between world and story, because the world was inherently, I mean, the story is actively shaping the world,
right?
Which is what good world building is. But I wanted more, and maybe it's because I felt that the books weren't long enough. Maybe that's my beef with it. But I wanted more world and less interaction with characters. They were such good books and such a good story.
Did it feel like there was more world to explore that you weren't getting, or did it feel like what you saw was what you got, and you just wanted the author to work on more world building?
I think it was that there were a lot of... I think it's that there were a lot of set pieces, so I wanted them to work more on specific parts of the world building, specifically... because they described such amazing places, but I wanted to know more about... They built amazing places, and they built some, of this, kind of informing us about the way the monarchy worked. They informed us a fair bit, actually, but they covered a lot of it in the beginning, and then just kind of took it for granted that the rest would fall into place. And it's not that it was confusing, it's just that what fell into place for me was just kind of bland, I wanted more about the politics, and maybe this is because I'm a Dune fan. I wanted more about the politics. I wanted more about how the main character's actions were affecting everyone, because the main character in the first book suddenly discovered that she was the heir to the throne, or one of the heirs to the throne, had to duke it out with others, that classic shtick. And I just wanted more gaps filled in. And I felt like it was a lot of set pieces and big dramatic moments with not as much substance between as I wanted. There was sufficient, but not enough. Not enough to make it spectacular for me.
So it felt like there were gaps in the world building.
Exactly, yeah. And I think that's because I read books specifically for the world building. I just wanted more. I don't really know what other reasons people read books for, but I don't know. I'm sure people read it specifically for characters, but those are so intrinsically tied to world building. One-liners.
I mean, there are people who read books just to imagine themselves as the main character and have some kind of weird power fantasy.
Do you not?
There's a lot.
No, that's why I play video games.
I see. True. Yeah. There's I would say there's definitely an interesting balance, and when it comes to world building and when it comes to showing off the world that you are building, in terms of trying to retain audience interest while also showing off as much of your world as possible. And I kind of land in the camp of, if your readers are wanting to know more about your world, that's better than them wanting to know less about your world, sort of and if you're talking about gaps in the world building where it's just there's something missing there and it's not explained whatsoever, that's generally a bad writing practice. But I'm definitely a big fan of leaving breadcrumbs where you mention a place, or you mention a culture or something like that might come into play later. Maybe it won't, but it sort of shows the audience that there's more here than is written on the page, which I think definitely does show off. Because there's I have a graph in my head, and I don't know if I can show it off. Could I pull up MS Paint and then draw something for you?
Yeah, stream it on Discord.
Oh, I could stream it on Discord. Fantastic.
Yeah. And then I'll throw the
had an MS Paint open the entire time last time in case I needed to draw something, and then just never did.
Because a lot of the way that I think about world building when it comes to showing things off like that is so you're going to have some amount of world building. This is just like everything you know about your world that you've built.
Yeah.
And the issue.
Sorry, getting it pulled up and resized here. The issue is yes.
The issue is if you're telling a story, you might run into a problem where your story actually ends up like intersecting your world building like this in such a way that your reader runs like head first into something that your world building hasn't planned for. And it sounds like this is at the very least similar to the problems that you had with the 100,000 kingdoms thingamahoo's.
Yeah.
Where, you know, you've got your plot that's just running from A to Z here, and it's for a lot of it, you know, you're seeing the world building, the work that was done with this world building, but every so often you're getting to a point where it just isn't there, you know, and it's clear that there's something that isn't there.
Yeah.
And I think this is something that I've definitely, like, when you run into, in my opinion, a lot of the times that you run into what would be considered a plot hole in a lot of pieces of fiction, the reason why is because a lot of the legwork for the world building just hasn't been done, and you're getting that sort of crossover between the plot and the edge of where the world building takes you.
Yeah.
And there's sort of something to, like, and I think you guys were talking a lot about this last time, like how much should you world build in preparation for a story? And the answer is always, at the very least, enough so that it can contain your entire plot plus a little more.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, if you're doing it in preparation for a tabletop game,
right,
and you don't exactly know how much plot's going to fit in there,
right,
how do you do that? I mean, it's nice that there's like pre-built, you know, campaigns and some pre-built worlds, but if you're doing this entirely from scratch, how do you know where to stop?
I mean, I feel like the answer is you just make enough to where, like, you handle what's expected and then have the vibe down for the rest of it, so that way you can just put more in, and don't be afraid of just being like, because specifically for tabletop, it's not like your players are going to read your adventure once and that's it. They are active participants in it, and so like you can go, hey, last time I said this thing, the person who told you that was actually lying, but you were able to learn this is the actual answer.
Yeah.
I think any GM worth their salt, if given a world with at the very least enough, what you're looking for is like depth of locations, depth of organizations, and if you're dealing with a magic system that's particularly like non-standard, you know, something other than D&D, you have mages and they have spells, a depth of magic system. And I think if you have those things, you have enough world building that, you know, any GM worth their salt will be able to make the connections necessary. You know, if you're going to a town, you don't have to have an entire world map where you know the location of 3 different chapels that all are from different sects of religion, and also know all of the imports and exports, and maybe you also know the history of the town and also the mayor. You don't need all of that. What you need is to know, for example, okay, I know this town is part of this country. Maybe this country is at war. Maybe this country has been at war. Just some major stuff that's like overarching. And then maybe just this is a farming town, this is a mining town, etc. And then what that enables you to do is if your adventuring party is traveling to this town, let's say, and you need to come up with an encounter on the spot, all of a sudden it's like, okay, it's a mining town, so obviously maybe they have a shipment of ores coming from this town and going back to the capital, which is the way that the heroes came from, and these ores ended up getting attacked by bandits, right? And that's just if you have those pieces in place, it's really easy if you're an experienced GM to go make those connections really easily and come up with something that makes a whole lot of sense for the setting. So I think when it comes to world building for a tabletop game, you're looking to, as a GM, give yourself enough of these plot hooks that once you need to come up with something on the spot, there's a whole lot of options right in front of you.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's solid advice. GMing scares me. It's scary.
Real.
It is scary.
Have either of you done it?
Oh yeah, all the time.
I just pushed it off for him to do.
I don't know. I don't think I'm quick enough on my feet to do it. I think that's like the main thing that keeps me from doing it. So when it comes to kind of like dovetailing off of like a tabletop game, not really dovetail. Like I guess do you think Clover, do you think your GM experience has influenced your world building style at all?
Because my experience as a GM influenced my world building style.
Yeah, like did it change the way that you like? I don't know. Did you write much before you started GMing, and then do you think you changed at all? Because I don't know. I world build from the perspective of I read a lot.
Right. I guess historically most of my writing has been in preparation for GMing.
Yeah.
I mean, I do have some personal projects that are completely unrelated to tabletop games at all. So I guess just thinking about those. I guess one of the things is definitely because I remember there are occasions where I'm sitting there and writing like prose as you would for a novel or something like that, and just constantly thinking about like, you know, being completely unable to finish a page because I've gone back and realized, oh, I need to set something up here so it makes more sense later, which is something I do a lot as a GM. You know, like if you're going to encounter a dragon in the cave, have scorch marks at the entrance, something like that. And I guess that's one thing in particular that's definitely affected my writing, where a lot of the times when I think about the plots that somebody reading whatever it is I'm making is going to go through, I think about it in terms of, okay, so obviously it's a little more railroady than a D&D game, but you want to make sure that in a D&D game, your party is equipped with all the information they need to reach the end and fight the boss. And I think if you're writing something that's like prose, you're in a very similar situation where you want to make sure the reader is equipped with everything they need to get to the end and understand the plot. So I think that's probably the main thing that I would think of.
That makes sense. That's an interesting perspective. Treating your reader like not exactly like a player, but yeah, that makes sense.
Like a podcast listener.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, I'm going through the stuff that we talked about last week. I guess my next thing I kind of want to talk about would be like, we talked about level of detail last week, Mezzo, and I guess this kind of goes into like the too much question that we asked before, but do you have, I guess, like a method for adding that more granular detail? This is a question to both of you. For example, like, do you start with like the big overarching, like, these are the themes that I'm including in this world? Or do you start with like, I have this specific flower that grows on this specific continent under these specific conditions, and then you sort of build up from there?
I've taken over all the questions, man. So you want to start for this one?
I would say that, like, usually I tend to start with I tend to start more so from those, like, oh, I have this one particular thing I want to make work, and like I end up building whole worlds off of that, rather than being, you know, more so the, oh well, I'm going to focus on trying to be like, okay, here's the themes. I have been trying, like, because I have discovered that historically, that's given me really good fleshed out worlds that are cool to talk about. But then I'm really bad at putting stories in them, because the cool ideas and stuff don't need a story to exist. They are cool ideas on their own. And I feel like the fact that, like, I just create all these things, and oh yeah, here's the way that the world works and all of that is independent of any of the characters that would ostensibly be living in that world.
Yeah.
So for the story parts, I feel like having like a good theme of like what you're planning on doing does matter a lot more.
Yeah.
just because then it makes more sense to be like, all right, we have flower growing on continent, growing at this specific weather and all that. But then it's like, okay, but why does that matter to the events of my story? Why is this something that would get shared?
Yeah.
Who cares in the universe? And why would they care? And how does that tie together?
No, that makes sense. I'm kind of in a similar boat where I won't say I'm like amazing at it, but I definitely will build a lot of worlds and then I'll be sitting there at the end like, well, fuck, now I have nothing. I don't want these characters to affect this world because I like where it's at, you know?
I tend to run into the problem, like, even before then, of having, like, just like I won't have certain pieces filled in of like, oh, well, what needs affecting? Like, I'll miss out the politics and all that because I'm like, well, the politics don't affect the stuff that I've put together so far. And so as a result of that, I'm just kind of like, yeah, I've put the thing together, and if anything, it would probably be better if I did have something like that, where I did have an actual, like, oh, I really like this particular element in the world, and I don't want things to change that element, because even then I could, write around that. Or I could, do the classic kill your darlings thing, where it's like, the fact that that's a thing that you're thinking of, oh, I don't want to change that, well, then make sure to do it. Just fuck it up, just ruin it in universe, because the fact that you're invested in it means it's a lot more likely that your readers could get invested in it, and that means it's gonna, like, matter more to them whenever it does happen.
That's true, yeah. I guess I hadn't thought of kill your darlings before a world, like, thing. How would you implement that? How would you put that into action?
I mean, the easiest thing to do is, like, if you say, like, okay, I really like this town or this political situation, right? It's real easy to just go, all right, so how do we turn this entire town that's really cool into dust? How do you go about, like, because it's like the same way as you get I keep trying to say players because we were talking about, like, players and readers. It's really kind of the same sort of thing of how you need to approach them. These are the people that you're sharing the world with. And so how they respond to that world is that's what you're trying to really play with, is getting them to respond to the different things. And so being like, oh yeah, you make this cool place, you get them excited about it, and then you blow it up, that's going to mean something. And ideally it should mean something in the context of the world itself, like for your theming as well. But, like, it kind of gives you, like, that sort of thing of, like, oh, I don't want it to change, but hopefully my players wouldn't want it to change either.
Yeah.
I've got some things to say with regards to both level of detail and the sort of killing your darlings thing.
Please do.
But when you think about narrative storytelling in general, the building block of any narrative is going to be conflict. If Sauron isn't around, there's no reason for Frodo to leave the Shire.
Yeah.
If there was no One Ring for Frodo to leave the Shire, then the story would probably be about how they're trying to marry him off, and that would be the big primary driving event of the story, and it would be a very different story.
Right. It would be drama about whether to have second breakfast now or later or something like that, But regardless, a lot of the core building blocks of any plot are going to be conflict. You're going to have characters in conflict. You're going to have some major conflict over the course of the entire story. You're going to have characters in conflict in individual scenes. You have no story unless you have a character that's trying to move forward and resistance against them moving forward. And what I found is that when it comes to world building and when it comes to trying to get down to a smaller level of detail, on the order of individual towns, individual locations, individual, like, or small organizations, I find it's really a really good way to write those is to come up with a conflict that they spring out of. I mean, a lot of world building is trying to figure out the history of a world, how things got to be the way they are now. And most historical events are conflicts. Most of what we learn about in history class is wars and related things, These are the things that kind of cause areas, people, etc., to be the way they are. And
Yeah.
I think that a lot of the time, a really good way to sort of get that granularity in your stories is just pick a small location and say, okay, I'm going to go back 50 years, 70 years, and tell a small self-contained story here. Because once you do that, you know, I guess just as an example, I don't know, you have a wheat farmer, their stuff gets burned down by a dragon, and they go off with a bunch of townsfolk to try to kill it or something. You know, so some super simple, super cliche high fantasy thing, right? All of a sudden, now you've got to figure out, okay, what's the location of this wheat farmer? What town does he belong to? Who are the rest of the farmers? Do they belong to some king? Does this king actually care about the issue with regards to the dragon? Do they maybe talk to this king to get his help with regards to the dragon? Or is the king just worthless and they're going off to deal with the dragon themselves? Who's the dragon? Where does the dragon live? What is the adventure to the dragon like? And as you're
Maybe
asking
it'd be cool
these
if
questions,
the king was the dragon, and that's part of the
maybe it
conflict.
would be. Right. But as you are figuring out a way for these old forgotten characters to solve the conflicts that they've been presented with, you're going to be asking questions, or at the very least you should be asking questions about the surrounding worlds, such that you figure out what this story is about, what happens in the story. And as you do that, you're getting little nuggets of world building. Maybe there's 70 years later, there's a huge scorch mark in the ground that is just from the conflict between these villagers and the dragon, right? And that exists all the way until now. And if you have a D&D party that you're GMing for, or you have a story that you're trying to tell, your characters pass through this area and they see a big scorch mark on the ground. All of a sudden, your reader is interested. The players you're GMing for are interested, and it sort of shows that you have that much backing whatever story it is you're telling. And I think that is a really good way to get, if you're looking to get granularity, that's a really good way to do it.
Okay. Neat. Yeah, I like that a lot. With those questions, just before, because I want to talk more about the kill your darlings thing, but
oh yeah, sure.
With the this is how these go. With the questions you ask, do you find those come up naturally, like just out of your own curiosity, or do you go off of like a list? Because personally, I just Google 100 world building questions and that kind of thing. How do you do that? And Mezzo, you as well. But Clover, how do you do it?
For me, they come up to me naturally, but that's because I've done this a shit ton.
Yeah.
When I've helped friends in the past, I absolutely have just Googled good world building questions, or have asked the questions myself. I mean, even in the past, when I've helped people with trying to figure out personalities for characters, I actually brought up the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, which Pokemon are you quiz?
I love that quiz. I love those games.
Right. I mean, it's
by the way,
fantastic.
just to be clear.
Hmm?
I'm friends, by the way, in this statement of helping out friends. I'm friends.
Right, but just I just use that because it's a fantastic, easy to come by list of questions about what it is your characters would do in a certain situation. But I think working off of a predetermined list like that is good. I guess I'm trying to think about how is it that I came by those instincts.
Reading a lot, probably.
Yeah, I guess I did. I used to read a lot. I don't read a lot anymore. Fucking, my brain has melted through my ears after high school.
Yeah, but, adulthood makes it hard to focus on much. Like,
for sure. I think a lot of it is definitely I have read and watched a lot of critique of other media.
Yeah.
And when you see other people, both positive and negative critique, when you see other people sort of tearing apart things that you enjoy and asking questions that you didn't, I think it definitely gets you into the mindset of knowing what questions could you ask about the pieces of media that you're consuming. And when you go off to, I assume, make the sort of pieces of the same sort of pieces of media that you enjoyed in the past, I think it sort of sticks with you to ask those same questions of yourself that you learn to ask of the things that you enjoy watching.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's just a practice thing.
Yeah, that's fair. Mezzo, does it come kind of naturally to you, or do you like Google a list? How does that process look for you?
I go to a friend.
Fair.
We'll talk with them about
a friend.
The punchline here is the friend is Clover.
I understand.
But mostly I do just really enjoy, like, since I enjoy sharing this kind of stuff with other people, like I enjoy making things and then sharing them with people. And so as a result of that, it's like, oh, I start sharing it with people, they start asking questions, I start coming up with answers.
I do think this is an incredibly valuable point as well, which is that you know, no matter how embarrassing it is to show off your art to other people or how shy you are about it, it really is important to get those second and third opinions about the things you wrote, because people are going to bring up points and bring up questions that you never even thought of and you never would have thought of on your own. And I think, you know, whenever I show anything off to somebody else, or I guess this is why I think world building for D&D is so fantastic of an exercise, because your players are going to be asking questions that you didn't think about, and you have to come up with answers. But I think getting that feedback from people you trust to have good opinions is a really, really important part of world building and writing in general.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, and sharing my writing is one of my biggest like fears, because I've had bad, I mean, like a lot of people, I've had bad reactions, or at least not bad reactions, but ones that harmed my desire to want to share again.
Oh yeah, dude, I went to like a liberal arts school that was super high on writing. I fucking had my ego and my everything torn to shreds multiple times over.
Yeah. Well, and Mezzo redeemed for a whatever Wednesday, Mezzo redeemed a bedtime story. Emrys shares their writing. Like that was their redeem.
Evil, but also,
I know, and I have never been more nervous. But you know, Mezzo, today maybe it was last night, I shared 2 of the characters from that story with one of my friends who I'm obsessed with their OC. And so I felt comfortable because they've told me so much about their character. I decided to tell them about my character, and they said they liked them, and that filled me with so much more confidence. I'm just gonna sit down and start editing mostly so that it's not incoherent. Not because I'm not like proud of what I wrote, but because I know that a lot of it was fueled by Red Bull and marijuana. So it's not gonna be particularly high quality.
At the same time?
Yes.
Yeah, at the same time. Like, listen, I have a friend who is another one of the people who I like go to for writing advice, and she absolutely, like, some of like her best world building and stuff like that she has done was done under the influence. So
it's my favorite way to write.
Taking caffeine and THC feels like setting up a humidifier and a dehumidifier in your room, and
then halfway in the middle you end up suddenly being able to.
And in the middle, a storm cloud forms in your room, and it's cool as hell. That's how it works, right? No,
yeah, that's how it works.
I don't know. No, weed doesn't put me to sleep. It just calms me down. So I calm myself down.
Effects with it.
I calm down. I wake up, and then I write. That's what I do. It's great. No, I get some of my most.
That having your anxiety get turned off is a thing that a lot of people benefit from.
It's incredible. It's so
it's just
great.
Unfortunate. The biggest issue is, like, this is a completely side thing. I've talked about how it's like, yeah, there's a lot of stuff like that, like alcoholism as a thing probably wouldn't be as big of a deal if we had better ways of dealing with anxiety as a society.
You're not incorrect. I strongly, like, I have family who are alcoholics, and surprise, surprise, severe anxiety all up and down the road, like all up and down the line. It's like, well, yeah, that's how it goes. And a lot of really creative people too, who, I mean, end up like struggling with addiction. I'm always like super aware of that, because, you know, with addiction in your family and all that. But a lot of really creative people end up going to that too, because like they all tend to run hand in hand, unfortunately. Mental illness and creativity, right? Yeah,
as far as I can tell, creativity is just thinking differently than other people, and wouldn't you know it, if you're mentally ill, you are
think differently.
Thinking different than other people.
You are. So when it comes to the kill your darlings thing, I want to touch on that again, because I think that's interesting. Would you consider this sort of the theme of this question is whether characters are inherently a part of the world. And I know that sounds silly, but it's more like the impact on the world if a character is removed, on like your world building, the development and state of the world. So would literally killing your darling, like killing a character, rather than destroying a really pretty thing in the story, or destroying an entire town, or something like that, would killing a character be the same, I guess, as impactful to your world building?
I'm gonna say, like, I'm gonna bring a thing up, like, as a quick example, because I feel like the answer is, obviously some things are more important to your world building than others. And I do feel like it is that there is characters are part of your world, therefore, to some degree they are part of your world building.
Yeah.
But they're gonna mean different things. For instance, you and I go, or like your cashier means something different to the world building of the story than, say, Elon Musk.
Yeah.
If Elon Musk dies, that's going to change the story a lot more than if your cashier died.
Yeah. True.
And so
that's
like,
fair.
Things like that are kind of like, I feel like that's where a lot of this difference comes in, is whenever I'm trying to answer this question. It's just like, oh yeah, the characters do matter, and like you can have like, oh yeah, if you kill a king, that's immediately a lot that you're doing for your story. So much is changing, like that is huge. But if you kill off Red Shirt number 328, it's not going to be as big of a deal
To the world, yeah. That makes sense. I guess then, I guess that kind of makes Elon like a, not a protagonist for sure, but damn.
I mean, he's important to the narrative.
In the novelization of Earth, he's a big character.
Important character. That's all he is.
He is. I hate him. He's my least favorite character.
For me, I would ask a clarifying question, which is like, what is the context that you're talking about in terms of killing your darlings? Are we talking about like a novel where you have some collection of main characters and you're talking about killing one of them off halfway through? Are you talking like you're building the history for a world and you're killing somebody off to impact? I guess, what's the context?
I guess I was just kind of thinking more like a big player in the world, or a big force in the world, like a king, or like not necessarily like in the history of the world, although I do that in that the long novel that I'm working on. I kill people off throughout history because their tragic deaths or whatever add to the oral history of the world, but. I guess it's more like killing figureheads in society, or killing a king, or important public figures.
Right. Yeah, I think I would say that goes back to the whole conflict builds history thing, where if you're killing off an important figure of some sort, you're getting the world building both of the everything leading up to that event. If they didn't die of natural causes, then all of a sudden you have a whole story in and of itself to tell right there, of how it is they were assassinated, poisoned, were on a walk, tripped over and broke their head. But you do.
I was gonna say, I do feel like there's an important thing where, like you said, like all of these moments are stories unto themselves. These world building things where you're just saying like, yeah, this person died in a dramatic way. That is world building, but that is also, you could tell that bit of world building as its own independent story. It's just not the story you're focusing on. Right. You're not zoomed in on it.
To be clear, like these aren't stories that you have to tell, but I do think it is generally a good idea to be aware of at least the general main points of the story, because that facilitates better world building.
And so it's like, whenever you say like, oh yeah, do I kill like this character, destroy this thing I really like, really the question is, from wherever you think the end point of the story should be, would that person be dead?
Right. I 100% agree with Mezzo here. When I write or when I world build, I am very much so goal oriented, where I think about, I guess first of all, in terms of world building, what is this for? Is this for a comedic story? Is this for some kind of high fantasy like adventure story? Is this for a D&D campaign? What is the vibe of the D&D campaign? And so those are questions that I ask in order to determine how I'm going to make decisions from there. And I think once you know what your goal in world building is, it's a lot easier to make those sorts of decisions, like whether to kill a certain character off, or because you get to the point where you're building from the endpoint backwards, and you're starting with, I need the world to be in this state at the end.
Okay.
I don't know, let's say I need a war-torn world that's full of ruins to explore of the previous societies, so my adventurers have a whole lot of fun exploring these ruins, getting valuables. And so you build one step backwards from that, which is, okay, what are the societies here? What types of things are my adventurers going to dig up? What type of dungeon crawls do I want them to have? And then you build one step backwards from that and start thinking about what the actual wars were, what important figures died, who was in charge of all of these warring states, and you keep building backwards from what your end goal is. And I think that's definitely the way that I tend to world build.
One thing Tape's saying is like
Yeah.
the differences of Kill Your Darlings. The real secret behind Kill Your Darlings is that you can apply it in like 50 different ways and it'll still probably help. Like if you're like, oh yeah, I wrote this scene that I really like, but I can't get it to fit into the story, don't be afraid to just say, all right, it doesn't fit. Gonna take it out of the story and just like save it for later. Maybe apply it to something else. Like,
who was I talking to that said that like you to like if you need a transition or if you need something you say and then like something absurd happens.
Ninjas happened.
Yeah, and then ninjas happen, exactly.
Yeah.
I think you could use that as similarly, like if you kind of know like, okay, they're at this place and and afterward they will be in this scene that I really like. In between something absurd happens, kind of thing.
Right.
I would force it to fit.
Right. I will say, I do think one of the pitfalls of writing a story from your end goal backwards is that you will run into a lot of situations where you have multiple conflicting goals that are like puzzle pieces and they can't quite fit together. Maybe you have a plot point that can't quite happen because two characters that need to be at that plot point have to be in two different places at the same time. Or maybe you have a situation where you require a magical artifact that isn't quite there at that point, in time. When you're building backwards like this versus building forwards, where you're just writing plot point, this is what happens next, this is what happened next, you will run into issues where things just do not fit.
Yeah.
And those are situations where I don't know if and then ninjas attacked would help, because while and then ninjas attacked works really well if you are starting from the start of your book and just going and seeing where the characters take you, and if you hit a wall, just have ninjas attack and see what happens. But when you're working backwards like that, it becomes a lot more of a puzzle, I would say, where you are trying to figure out how to fit all of your pieces together such that you reach your end goal in a way that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. And Mezzo, I apologize if I cut you off earlier, but when you said like having a scene that fits, or that doesn't quite fit anywhere, do you find yourself with a lot of scenes like that? Because I know I do.
I mean, I tend to just find myself with a lot of scenes.
Fair.
There's not even a thing for them to fit into.
Okay.
So you're building inside out is what's happening. Not even.
Yeah.
It's a collection of short stories.
Yeah, and so I do tend to like that. That tends to be what happens. Is I've just started going, I'm just gonna write short stories in a world, because like to some degree I even do just enjoy those kinds of like that is a storytelling thing. Is hey, here's a whole bunch of different little bits that are happening in this same world, and like whenever it just starts out as like these nice little moments, and then all of a sudden you realize, hey, wait, they're all clicking together out from under me, and then you start getting invested in seeing how all these different parts click together.
I do want to interject real quickly for one chat message before I forget.
Yeah.
For Tape Player, yes, Kill Your Darlings usually does actually refer to the concept of not being able to kill the characters that you love so much if it's important for the sake of storytelling. I guess we were just using it in terms of I guess Emrys considers all of their OCs darlings and
They
killing any of
are.
them off,
All
even
of
if they're
them.
historical figures.
Even the bad ones. No, yeah, okay. To be clear, I have people who will not be active characters in the story, that I have full, like, character profiles developed for. Okay, they will
Right.
have a little bit of dialogue through, like, history books, you know?
This is your Silmarillion content.
Yes, it is. Leave me alone. We got a hydrate or dihydrate.
Oh yeah,
Hydrate or
guys,
dihydrate.
also,
Yes.
Please feel free to put any additional questions or prompts, or somebody said, "Can I share an encounter idea?" Like, absolutely go for it. I think we'll. I know M has some prompts saved up, but we'll also
No
just, like,
dick.
Yes.
go through all the things you guys talk about.
And probably no butthole since this guy feeds on radiation.
Thank you, Wiz, for the lovely sound alert. We have guests.
I'm gonna steal the hydrate or dihydrate. Is that okay?
Go right ahead, please do.
Hydrate or dihydrate. Everybody take a big drink of water, and if you don't have water, go fill yours up, because when I drink, we all drink. Today, mannequin is our reason for drinking.
Very good. Excellent.
I managed to say everything except for mannequin's name correctly, and that's because my brain is made of soup.
But at least you're
And unfortunately, the
hydrated.
next time that does get redeemed, I will have to actually go and get more water.
Mm-hmm.
So we were
Okay.
talking about scenes and building from scenes first.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I build from characters first generally,
Right.
or I have like a really cool like visual, like a usually it's a picture I found like just on Twitter or somewhere like Pinterest. Like I'll see something like, oh my god, that building is incredible. I must house my silly little people in it. I must put my
sure.
characters here. And so I'll write about that. I'll write about like their life in that building, or I'll write about like the work that's done in that building or shit like that. But usually it starts from there or from characters. What?
I tend to have it with songs where I'll
Yes,
listen to,
me
like, a
too.
song, and I'm just like, oh, I have a scene playing out to this. And like I have entire worlds basically where like they happen because I thought of one scene to one song, and now I'm in it.
I am, and I've said it before on stream, I am a fucking sucker for those stupid themed playlists on YouTube. Oh my god, the one where it's like, POV, your god complex is acting up, and I'm like, yeah, it is, you're goddamn right.
Fantastic.
I need more playlists like that because like
Mezzo, I will compulsively send them to you.
Them myself.
Yeah, you have made a dangerous commitment, Mezzo.
Listen, I'm out here making all kinds of these sorts of commitments with my friends, and I've never once regretted.
Good. Okay, because they're all coming your way, baby. Don't worry about it. Emrys has gotcha. I do. They really, music is, there's something about like a really banger playlist that just, I've written for a solid like 3 hours before, like good writing, not just like the crappy, like, oh, I wrote for 3 hours and it was maybe 10 minutes of writing and the rest of it was like, it was quote unquote research, and it was just like reading writing tips or like watching like book YouTube or author talk or whatever, or it was just scrolling Wikipedia for like how a part of my like magic system might work, you know, like how to make it vaguely scientific.
Real.
Yeah, no, it's
I've had this problem with Second Moon, just because like I'm like, oh yeah, I want the way that crystals affect magic to be reasonable and not just be, well, rubies make fire and sapphires make ice, but at the same time there's like a point where I feel like I gotta just say, yeah, maybe we do just have that happen and we explain why later.
Or you don't explain why at all. You just don't explain it. You just say, and it works. It just works. You give it the old Todd Howard. You say, it just works.
Yeah. With regards to starting from characters or starting from scenes, I actually think like that is a fantastic way to write, because any method that gets you writing is a method that gets you writing, you know? And so I wholeheartedly encourage, you know, even if you're working on a larger project and even if the bits that you're working on don't necessarily fit, just anything that gets you into that mindset, anything that gets words on the page is fantastic. However, I will also say that this sort of form of writing, it's something, of course, I've done before. You know, I've had OCs that were orphaned and didn't necessarily have a place to go, and scene ideas between them and trying to get them into, you know, more of a long form narrative structure is difficult.
Yeah.
And I think once you get to the point where you have all of these characters and you have ideas of how they're going to interact, and you want to put them together into something long form, a narrative from A to Z, you have to get used to dropping a lot of the things that you worked on. It's really unfortunate, but the fact is, like you said, you're going to end up with a lot of scenes that don't necessarily fit anywhere. And when you figure out what kind of story you want to tell, in all likelihood, you're going to have a lot of scenes that don't fit the story you're trying to tell. And if something doesn't fit the story you're trying to tell, it shouldn't be a part of it. And so, of course, that's not to say, like, delete your work or anything like that.
Yeah.
But
I think it would be cool if at the end of stories, just like on DVDs, I think that there should be a deleted scenes section. God damn it. Because I am sure there are so many. Wouldn't that be incredible? Like, rather than them trying to go back in and re-add it or doing like an extended edition or something. No, I want deleted scenes. Yeah.
There's actually in the Golden Compass and that series, the author did a thing at least in the big like all 3 books in one version,
the omnibus version,
where there was like a section at the end that was lantern slides, which was just a whole bunch of little individual moments.
Oh, what the fuck? I never read that.
It's really good. The lantern slide section is like, that one is one that really stuck with me, and kind of, it was part of what inspired me with a lot of this kind of writing style of, I'm just going to do these individual scenes and then kind of string them together. The way that he described it was like, oh yeah, you have like, those old style things where you have like a lantern and then you have the individual little like projector slides that you put in front of it and then it will shine like onto the wall what that is. But the ones that he found in like his grandpa's attic, there's just random slides from random things that there's no like clear order they're supposed to go in, no idea. So you just have all these individual like moments and the individual little scenes, and that you just have that one thing. You don't know where it goes, you don't know what the context is, but you do know that you have it. And that was one that really stuck with me.
I actually do think that's a fantastic idea. I would love if more authors did this, especially like, because you're going to have bits and bobs that just did not fit in the story. And again, I think if you want to write a narrative, be it a novel, a comic, any sort of like plot from A to Z, you have to get used to the fact that some of your scenes and characters are just not going to fit. But I do think that is a really cool idea for just being like, please look at my characters. I worked so hard on them.
Yeah, exactly. And tape player, just going back to your chat message, especially in D&D, players will clown on your cool character you had big plans for. It's that, or they will focus on a character that you did not have any plans for. Source, I'm one of those.
The real secret to that is just if they do that, just take one of your characters you did plan for and just stick them inside that other character's body.
There you go, and then it's their problem.
And just like it's the trick to avoid railroading, you give them decisions they can make, but you don't actually necessarily have to make the decisions matter.
Actually, I think the key to avoid railroading is really good world building, because again, if you have all of the pieces in place that you can come up with stuff on the spot, then all of a sudden you don't have to be worried about railroading. Because if your PCs, and this is especially important for longer term campaigns, but if your PCs decide to walk into the woods just to see what happens, all of a sudden these woods are haunted, and what kind of spirit haunts them, and you can come up with those sorts of things. I think that's the real secret to avoiding railroading.
Yeah, I think there's something to that. The problem is there's so many ways to railroad people.
Yeah.
And I think if a GM or if a world builder, if a storyteller even is too attached to their story, Count Julius, welcome in, thanks for the first time chat. And C-Man, thank you for the follow. I think that if somebody is too, they're not flexible enough, like, to let the story unfold on its own, which is, I mean, that's the definition of railroading, but like that, with players, it becomes unfun. And with writing, I don't necessarily know that readers can tell. I mean, I'm sure it will make a bad story if it even makes a finished story, because that would, if I were to be too attached, I used to be too attached when before I got out of college, when I was writing and doing writing for fun, but in college, I felt so attached to these ideas because writing was an escape, and I felt like if I was giving up on a particular project, I was like failing at writing, you know. So I had to stick with this idea, how I had it at the beginning. But just getting more flexible with that, I actually finished things, you know.
Let's go.
Like things that, I mean, you know, like to a certain extent, like they're you know, finished, you know, still needs edits, but like I don't know.
Finishing is still like that's already a huge step, and that is like a big thing. Is that even if you're like, oh yeah, I finished my first draft,
yeah,
that's still like oodles
a
better
finished step, yeah. And
not
I just
finishing your first draft.
I think that there are so many ways to railroad, because if you're not railroading your players as a GM, you're railroading yourself as a writer, because then you write yourself, that's writing yourself into a corner, I think, anyway.
So, at the very least, I can give some advice with regards to how to set up your GMing in order to facilitate better railroading. Because, of course, railroading isn't always a bad thing. For example, I have GM'd a lot of one-shots, and when you're GMing one-shots, you have an end of the plot that you're trying to get you to. You have a specific final boss that you're trying to get your players to in time. You know, if they try going out into the world, they're going to find nothing because it is a one-shot.
Yeah.
And what I like to do in those situations is all of my writing is done prior to the point that the characters get there. The players show up to the situation after all of the events have already occurred, and everything from then on is up to them.
Okay.
I mean, as an example, for some of the campaigns that I've done with Mezzo, a lot of them are they show up. The world is one that's ravaged by demons, and so very often they'll show up to a town that has just been absolutely like nearly wiped out or on the verge of being wiped out by a bunch of demons. They're showing up after the fact, after everything has happened, and now their job is to figure out what it is that happened, figure out what needs to be done, and then either figure out a way to prevent it or get revenge or get the head of the demon that did it, etc. And I think that is a really fantastic way of kind of forcing your players into going down a specific path without necessarily forcing them into a specific plot.
Okay.
I guess Mezzo can talk about how well that went, because
I mean,
she was the
a lot
player.
of times it would go really well because it's like, to some degree, you have the like the situation of like, okay, you know, you show up to this for the, like, you show up to some area, and it's like, okay, yes, it has been ravaged by demons. Things have already gone to shit. We do need to figure out like what's going on from there. But then there's also like, sometimes you have things like the Beowulf story, for instance, where it's like they've already had like Grendel being around, and then they all start partying, and then Grendel shows up again. And so you might think, oh, well, it's in the middle of it, but really there was the story that already happened of Grendel showed up and wrecked our shit. It's just that they never finished that story, and saying it's like the end of it was, and then he left. Like that particular scene ended, and so we only think of it as like the beginning of a larger story because we have the context. Yeah. But in universe, the story was over. The story they told is, yeah, this monster came in, wrecked us, and left. Anyway, we fixed it all. Want to party with us?
Yeah, I do think that specific type of GMing and setting up your world beforehand is fantastic, because as the GM, of course, it feels bad when the characters completely eschew everything you wrote, go off the path of your plot. But this way, they can't fuck with your story because it already happened. Yeah. They can't do anything.
That's true. At least they can't fuck with that part of the story. They can't, like, the important shit that's actually a really good, like, that's a really good idea.
Yeah, if you want something to 100% happen, just have it already happen.
Yeah.
Actually, if it's 100% already happened.
In the most recent campaign I did with Mezzo, which it's probably like 6 months ago at this point. Jesus Christ, we need to get back to that. But I had it set up as a mystery where they were a whole bunch of priests and clerics investigating basically a big city that's a retirement home for dead priests whose ghosts just haven't left yet. And ghosts have been disappearing left and right, and they don't know why, because usually ghosts don't die a second time. And so I had everything set up ahead of time. I knew the entire story. And they were entering and basically solving Sherlock Holmes style a mystery, talking to people everywhere, entering the houses of those that have disappeared, trying to figure out what went on. And when they finally got to the end, they figured out who was doing it, and they found their base that was like off-site to try to deal with them. The players did something incredibly stupid and alerted themselves to the person at the base and just did not end up catching them. And that was something that was totally okay to happen.
Yeah.
Even though I was I was definitely surprised, like, why are you this fucking stupid? Why are you doing this? But of course, like, it was really funny, and it didn't end up hurting anything just because I had already told my story, and sure, I had a boss fight set up, but they didn't ruin the story by not taking on the boss. And they just went home not having solved the problem.
I mean, that's an outcome.
Yeah.
We did do a funny bit afterwards where we did like a bonus thing where we did fight the boss just to find out how we would have handled it.
That's I mean, that's kind of a fun, silly thing. Like, it's a game. Like, you can do silly stuff like that.
Things where, as far as the story of the world is concerned, yeah, the people showed up too late, and now we could end up having a second story where it's like, all right, now someone else has to deal with this person and all their stuff, and it's like, we told the one story of the people who failed, but their story is now part of another larger story about the person who's going to eventually succeed.
Yeah.
I think a mark of a really good GM is to be able to enable your players to do really, really stupid things without it ruining the campaign.
Okay.
And I think that type of building out, and again, this works more specifically for one shots. I'm sure you could modify it, and I have to work for like specific quests over the course of a longer campaign. But it just enables you to let your characters fuck up and fuck up big time, just because you don't have a story prepared for them to walk towards. Or walk down.
Yeah. That's I like that. I'm stealing for if I ever DM. I don't know if I'm ever gonna have the courage to do that, but if I ever do, I'm stealing all of your ideas.
Just wait until episode 8.
Yeah.
I mean, it clearly seems like the direction we're trending in here is trying to get you to DM a campaign here.
Yeah.
How much longer are we willing to go on right now? Oh, by the way, because I might just post the stream to get more folks in here.
Please do. Yeah, I still have. Last time Mezzo and I went on for what, 3.5 hours?
I mean, 3 hours is what I tend to schedule my streams for. So.
Yeah. So yeah, we're only an hour 10 in. So please do. I'm getting my. I know this is really silly, but I have this thing so that I can keep an eye on, like, so I visually can keep an eye on both of you. Like, it looks more entertaining if I am looking at both of the PNG tubers. So I have a piece of tape on my monitor that I'm supposed to look at when I'm not looking at chat, and it looks good because it kind of looks like I'm looking at either of you. It looks better if I look away because it looks like I'm looking down at you. But yeah, it looks pretty darn good.
That's actually really big brain.
Tape my eyes emoji.
What?
What color tape am I eyes emoji?
You're both okay. Actually, you're both Scotch tape on a paper towel. Because I wanted to be able to peel it off after.
Paper towel colored.
It's what I had on my desk. You're both paper towel colored. I mean, IRL, I'm paper towel covered. Colored.
Paper towel covered.
Yes,
White.
I upset the white balance on my camera when I do hand cam streams.
I wouldn't be surprised if the same thing happened to me.
You're not just white, you're white derogatory. Oh no.
So this
automatically
is
white.
This is a worry that I have. When I'm working on, well, anything, but world building especially, I worry that my world in general, or the themes, or just parts of my worlds are unintentionally stolen. Like I have internalized that something's just a trope, or it's just derivative, and I don't realize it.
All right.
That's fine.
Here we go.
I am the world's biggest proponent of use as many tropes as you possibly fucking can. Okay, I hate all of this bullshit of trying to be subversive. The fucking Joss Whedon evolution to Marvel MCU Studios of being like, oh, we can't just do the thing everybody expects us to do, or we're just going to do the thing everybody expects us to do, but talk about how shitty it is that we're doing the thing that everyone expects us to do. Tropes are tropes for a reason. There are only so many ways you can structure a story. Use them as much as you fucking can. What is the quote? There is no theft in art as long as you can hide who you stole it from. Like, I believe in that wholeheartedly. It's not fucking plagiarism if you're stealing an idea, or you're stealing the way a story works, or even if you're stealing pieces of a magic system. This is just how we as humans create, by taking things we like from other pieces and amalgamating them into something that represents the thing that we want to exist. So
shout outs to artists and closed species.
yeah, fuck that. But absolutely, I think somebody might have been Tape earlier on talked about like you constantly running into situations where parts of worlds that you built are you accidentally realize through talking to somebody else that it's similar to some other form of media. And I just say, okay, good. And good. I mean, I hate
to inform you, but how many orcs are similar to the orcs that they had specifically in Lord of the Rings?
Right.
And you don't need to reimagine them, because now it's just a way that people talk about, like, yeah, we have a cultural shorthand for describing this thing, and that's fine.
Yeah.
Things get popular for a reason. You like story tropes for a reason. And I think the sort of, like, there's a lot of people who are of the opinion, and I think a lot of this is sort of self-inflicted too, because you'll often, artists of all kinds will just be like, I'm not original, the stuff I'm making is derivative, etc. And I just hate that, because if things weren't, if we never produced derivative art, nobody would ever produce art of any kind. So yeah, I say fucking honestly, go to TV tropes, press random tropes, look up the pieces of media that you like, see what tropes they use to tell individual episodes. I'm a big fan of TV tropes specifically just because it allows you to take apart the stories that you enjoy to see what makes them tick, see what it is. Because I think when we consume media and we read stories and we read narratives, we have some sort of intuitive understanding of the way these things work. But when you have all of the different elements laid out in front of you and you understand, okay, this is foreshadowing, they're using this character specifically to kill them off to set the tone for the rest of the story. This is specifically not a Deus Ex Machina, but it's a well done one because they set out early in the story, etc., etc. Just being aware of the building blocks of stories and what makes the stories you enjoy work, and then using those for your own stories. I think, in general, worrying about being derivative or copying another work is bullshit, and you should not do it.
Wow.
Good.
I just... Tropes are one thing. Like, I don't mind tropes. I love enemies to lovers is my favorite trope.
Sure.
What's your favorite trope? Mezzo, what's your favorite trope? It doesn't have to be a romance trope, just enemies to lovers happens to be mine.
I don't know, honestly. Like, I don't really feel like I have a favorite trope per se. Like, I don't know. I've never thought about what I would say my favorite trope is, other than like weird segmented stories that like have a whole bunch of individual parts that like come together in the end. Like, that's the closest thing I have to a trope that I really like.
Yeah, that's fair.
Can we get Sprout out of here for talking about lewd things? Can we get some graham cracker regimes at Sprout?
Oh my god.
Just absolutely disgusting.
Jesus. I can't believe you.
All right, it sounds like you're talking about more than just taking tropes from something, right? What do you got?
What do you mean?
Like,
well, not just tropes. Speaking of, did you say your favorite trope?
I don't know if I have one. Favorites are hard.
They are hard. So not just tropes. It's more perhaps. Sprout, you can't time mods out.
If you time out a mod, they get demodded.
Really? Don't demod Sprout.
Means if you ban a mod, it would also demod them. And timeouts are basically just small bans.
It's like not truly unique stuff. There's nothing new under the sun.
Yeah.
But there are some things that are pretty clearly, they either haven't become tropes yet, or they're very, very unique. Unfortunately, I can't think of anything. Okay, we hate the wizard books, but like,
Sure.
well, no, because broomsticks are like a witch and wizard thing. I was thinking Quidditch, but
Broomsticks are a
that's...
thing. The like sports in school is a thing. Like there's all this stuff that seems like it should be somewhat unique, but then you realize, hang on, these are just other concepts, but applied to a new setting.
Let me think about if it shows up in my... I guess, like... Well, no. I can't think of anything in my story that would
actually fit
count.
with that.
Besides the fact that I had a non-binary, one of the protagonists, a non-binary protagonist named Ash. And I don't think that's so much a trope as it is a stereotype.
That one's so much of a fucking trope. I know that person in real life.
I know multiple. Ash or Elliot or Alex or
I mean, having non-binary person named after inanimate object, they just do that a lot, I've noticed.
Or
and sock and brick and
for either a masculine or feminine name. But yeah, it's every non-binary person is either named Ash or Stick.
Or like a a very short like nickname that they just go by, like M,
right.
Or like Mo, or like that kind of thing.
Hey, Mo.
Like hate the author, not the work. I don't hate the genre, but I do hate the work. I hate the work because of the author. It's unfortunate, but hello, Daddy Spoon. Thanks for the follow.
Back to your high versus low fantasy stuff.
I could talk for a long ass time about the wizard books.
Yeah.
What I'll say that the setting is creative and has a lot of fun set pieces.
Yes.
But there is nothing else, in my opinion, that is like of significant import. Nothing that makes those books stand out among the rest. Like the quality of the prose isn't that great. The plot itself, the main character, not particularly interesting. There's
the reason
just
that most people like it is because of the nostalgia.
I think it was sort of the harbinger of a whole sort of genre of young fantasy, and just kind of like it was the first to break out into that, you know.
Yeah.
What were we talking about?
A lot of things.
Sure.
I was thinking about how, like, just really quick, I was thinking about how the Earthsea books were kind of not the original, but they were the first really good wizard school books, you know, that were like widely published. And those came out in like the 70s. So it's like none of that wizard school thing been done.
Yeah.
Better multiple times.
Yeah, this is, and I guess if you do eventually figure out what pieces of your writing you think are like a little too derivative of other things you've read, feel free to let me know. But I feel like 90% of the time when people talk about things like this, it is, like Mezzo said, a combination of other pre-existing very popular tropes.
Yeah. And so I listened for like writing. Ooh, I just clicked the stream starting rather than the I was trying to click into my OneNote. Specifically, I think to this podcast I listened to that's specifically about querying. Not that I think I'll ever get to that point. Like, I don't know if I'll ever query when it comes to something I've written. But they talk about using references for, like, referencing a book specifically. You know, like saying...
It's like art.
Yeah, well, exactly. They say, like, in your query letter, you should say, this is like Harry Potter in space, or this is like...
your elevator pitch.
Exactly, yeah. But, like, using specific books. This is like Macbeth meets John Wick. You know? Like, something like that. So, I can see why I can see why you do it. I
Hang on,
don't
I'm
want to
thinking
be
about
called
Macbeth meets
derivative.
John Wick. I am thinking about Macbeth meets John Wick now, and like
Hey,
the concept of you killed my father. Now we're gonna spend the rest of this book of me murdering everybody else in this palace, but instead of doing it in a shitty like drama way that's a tragedy, I'm actually just going to purposefully kill everyone.
You killed my dog's dad.
Could we perhaps get a quick definition of querying for those in chat who
Oh,
don't know what it is?
yeah.
Definitely not me. I know what it means.
After our hydrate or dihydrate, who wants to say it?
I'm gonna
Clover,
get
would you
my-
like
I
to say
actually
it?
Go refill my water, so I'm gonna go do
Oh,
that.
good plan. Do that. Clover, that leaves you. Would you like
This
to say the
one's-
hydrate or dihydrate?
I guess I'll try, but I don't remember. Everybody hydrate or dihydrate. If you have a drink, if you don't drink, have a drink. Fill the drink up. The reason for drinking is flame 6728. So when I drink, we all drink.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Excellent work. So a query letter is, you send so in order to get published nowadays, like by a big publisher, you need an agent pretty much always. It is not super possible to represent yourself unless you were previously an agent or are some kind of savant. You send a query letter and are very likely denied. Like, the authors will collect all their query letters and have tens to hundreds of them. But it's just a letter that it includes your elevator pitch of your novel. Generally, it'll say your number of words, like your word count in your piece. It'll say a specific genre, which is usually geared toward the agent you're querying, so that they can get through it as fast as possible. It'll include a reference. Generally, good query letters, from what I've listened to, and I've listened to and read a lot about querying. It'll include like a reference it'll call out to other books or other sources that your manuscript or your song or your poem or your whatever, maybe not song, but your poem or whatever will be will be akin to, but maybe not perfectly. And then it'll include a few pages of your manuscript, and that kind of depends on what the agent wants. But that's querying. And like I say, authors will often collect their denied query letters because it is extremely hard to get represented by an agent, unless you are already established, have published and like gotten a certain amount of notoriety. If you're a celebrity, that makes it much easier to get an agent, because there are agents that exclusively represent celebrities. There are agents that exclusively represent new authors, but generally those are for really small publishing houses. That's my understanding of querying. Clover, did I miss anything?
That that sounds like the definition of querying that I definitely know.
I've listened to a lot of, specifically, it's The Shit No One Tells You About Writing is what that podcast is called. It's very good. And why did I suddenly slip into a transatlantic accent? It's very good. But it's a really good podcast. And they read actual query letters so that they're sent to the host of the podcast, not intending to query them, like to actually get them to respond, but specifically like to get feedback on their query letter to see if the query letter itself is any good. And honestly, I really like listening to that almost as much as the writing itself. I don't think they ever read transcripts or pieces of the manuscript. But they do read the letter, and some of the ideas that people have are very interesting. But yeah, it's a really cool show. And then there's a website that I don't think is active anymore, but it's just examples of almost it's got to be like 1,000 query letters that it just has like this harsh, concise critique from this woman who has been, she's a hard ass. She's been in the business, the publishing business for 60 years. She's like if she was young and blonde, she'd be like the Hallmark movie protagonist where she like works really hard and is no nonsense. She's hilarious. I like her a lot. And she just really concisely tells you what's wrong with your query letter. very, very good like advice. And listening to that podcast and reading on this query letter blog have both. It definitely didn't motivate me to keep writing because it was just kind of like, oh my God, this is daunting. But if I ever do like want to get actually really published, there are a lot of resources out there to help authors. It's just the acceptance rate because it's so based on already having connections, which a lot of times means already being rich. So much of it is based on having those connections, like to an agent or their agent having connections. It's the barrier to entry is really high, and it's just so much easier to self-publish. And like Amazon makes it absurdly easy.
There's a lot of issues with Amazon publishing.
Oh,
though.
100%. But that's like the platform. Like you
At
have
least it's
that,
easier.
and exactly. It's streamlined, and if you don't have any problems, it's like you're not guaranteed. But with that and TikTok, it's a killer combination because everybody knows Amazon and everybody can just get there, and you can publish elsewhere. Well, not with Amazon, but if you can, like, not simultaneously with Amazon. Believe it or not, Amazon with their books and their audiobooks, they don't let you publish your audiobooks anywhere else. They don't let you publish your books anywhere else, which I think is just bonkers. It's like Twitch with their simultaneous streaming thing, which I think they just got rid of. It just blows my mind. Okay, now I don't want to be full of shit. I thought they just changed something with that, but I'm not sure. Let me double check. Twitch
Would be very surprised if Twitch did something to actually improve the experience of anyone who uses Twitch.
You do not
Very
allow
unusual for them.
Oh, maybe not.
It might be partners only and not affiliates.
You might be correct. Simulcasting on short form mobile services on such as TikTok or Instagram Live is allowed.
God.
Oh, but not on YouTube or Facebook.
Specifically,
Why?
those. Fuck them.
Because they don't see them as competitors, which is
I
crazy because TikTok
guess.
Live is like popping off.
Yeah. Oh,
They
yeah,
should
it
see them as
is.
Competitors is the problem.
Speaking of,
They
like,
should.
I've heard some of the stuff out of Book Talk, and like, it's fucking insane.
It
Like,
is.
TikTok as a marketing platform for books, there are so many people who just fucking out of the ether post a couple of TikToks about a premise for a book,
Yeah.
and then just all overnight become a household name, at least
Is
in
this
that
sort of
genre.
like the Twitter, like how they used to handle everything through Twitter? Did they just move over to TikTok? Is that what happened?
They still handle things through Twitter, but they market over TikTok. That's literally how I'm handling my VTubing career.
Yeah.
Like
it's not
I
just
still
that,
think
but
it's
like,
funny that it used to be one of the best ways to do like get published was through talking to people on Twitter.
mhm.
It's not like I really like watching, because there is going back to querying, there's whole seasons not seasons, there's like events annually or periodically for specific sections of Twitter, for specific genres, for specific types of writers. So there's like I think it's LGBT Pit, where people will pitch their books to agents. There's a difference between a query and a pitch. A pitch is just the elevator pitch part. And then they'll ask for either a manuscript or sometimes they'll ask for a query letter, just like in their DMs or something, if they particularly like your pitch. But yeah, there's LGBT Pit, which I've wanted to participate in. When I get my current story, my very gay steampunk noir, probably romance, in its state of readability, I would
You already
love to
said
participate
gay,
in
so
that. But yeah, there's a lot of them. It's really cool.
I know also there's some stuff around publishers, like publishing houses, agencies, agents, etc., pushing modern authors to go on TikTok. And I've heard stuff around like fucking 40, 50-year-old seasoned boomer authors who don't know what a TikTok is being asked to put videos up on TikTok about their book.
I love seeing TikToks of like business, like kind of traditional like tradesfolk businesses, with the one like 20-year-old like journeyman who has to run the TikTok, and the punchline of the video is, my boss told me to make a TikTok. And I feel like there's gonna be like representatives, like some agent who also has to run the TikTok for this author. Like, Stephen King told me to make him a TikTok.
Yeah, I will say something though, which is just like, from the outside looking in, and obviously I don't know a whole lot about this world. I haven't been reading modern novels in a while, and I'm not on TikTok. But from what I've seen, it kind of worries me that a lot of the reasons why these books will get popular is just like through sheer happenstance, because a meme popped off about the book, or just because the premise sounds cool, and these books will get popular regardless of the actual quality of the writing.
Yeah,
Which is,
I mean, that's the only reason I got popular on TikTok. I got a fucking 1,000 followers from me asking people where they pissed from, and the quality of the VTuber behind that is just as bad as the TikTok. So don't worry, it's every part of TikTok.
oh, fantastic! That just makes me worry more.
I mean, if anything, that just means like I feel like the quality of the writing has never been entirely like we were talking about how wizard books are so popular despite the lack of anything being particularly great about them.
This is true, but I think wizard books are the anomaly. I mean, the person who wrote them became a billionaire because of them. Like, they stand far and above every other book in the genre, and quite frankly, most other books of works of fiction. Period. They kind of transcend all of the other rules when it comes to novel writing, I'd say.
Yeah, I agree. To an extent. I mean, there's always the trends in genres. I mean, we have the wizard school ones.
There was the wizard schools, there was dystopias after that.
Yeah.
And I think this one might still be popular. There was the whole what the fuck is it called? It just like romances about people who are like fighting demons and shit. Like, there was the Shadowhunter series.
Yeah.
There was a Court of Something, a whole bunch of them.
Yeah, I mean, there's so like.
Right.
The problem is none of them are coming to mind, but like I know that this happens. It's a lot like, I mean, movies do it too, but
I think the Shadowhunter series would be the big one, where that was like mid to late 2000s. It was pretty big, and I read a couple of the books, and I wasn't the biggest fan, but part of the reason they got really popular is just because like it was fantasy smut.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which I guess smut will always be popular regardless of the quality.
That's very true. That's very true. Tape Player says, I think Sanderson is approaching that level of popularity. He's kind of the opposite of JK personality wise. Yeah. And I think, well, he's had popularity with a certain crowd just because I don't know if he still does, but he did attend cons and like, he did attend some cons, but he also attended like conferences, not conventions, where he talked a lot about writing, and some of those made it to YouTube. And I love watching his videos on YouTube. They are so good. They are some of the most enlightening things I've read on world building. He's the one who really made me question my magic system, because we talked about this last week, Mezzo, with the nature versus nurture magic, the whole whether it's born magic or learned magic, because born magic has some capital I implications that I do not want to address in my book. That's not what we're there to talk about. We're there to be gay and
prevent crimes.
Yeah.
This is a fantastic point that you raise. And I haven't seen the Sanderson lectures, though. Like, of course, I'm aware of him. He's fucking Brandon Sanderson. But that does sound a lot like the whole figure out what kind of story you want to tell first, and then figure out everything after. And that comes down even to the magic system, you know, figuring out how it is, because your magic system is, especially if you're telling a story, your magic system should serve the purpose of allowing you to do all of the cool shit that you want to do in the story. Your magic system facilitates all that. And so starting with figuring out what kind of world you what kind of story you want to tell. You know, I mean, in fucking JoJo's, the whole point is just having a bunch of overly masculine characters beating the shit out of each other with crazy powers and constantly one-upping each other. So of course, having the softest magic system of all time where anything goes works fantastically for that story. But meanwhile, the Sanderson books, where I mean, basically you need to take a fucking 102 chemistry class to understand how some of those magic systems works, but that's because that facilitates the type of story that he's trying to tell, where a lot of the solutions are based off of understanding how the magic system works, down to it being a science.
I as a side effect, cannot wait till we find out how all these magic systems are actually the same magic system, because that's the bit I'm waiting for.
Yeah.
we literally already know that that's true. I just want to know why and how.
Player says, yeah, don't try and make your magic system grow organically out of other setting pieces. How do you develop your magic system? Like, is it that whole fits the universe thing, or?
Yeah, so I guess I can start with probably my most developed world that I've used for the most campaigns, including the one I was talking about earlier with Mezzo, would be my Missing God world, which that started out from not even the type of story I wanted to tell, but just like, I want a world where like every European myth, from werewolves and vampires to Celtic fae to even like proto-Christian / Jewish like angels and demons and golems, etc. They're all real simultaneously. And that was the goal. And everything from there was working backwards to figure out what it is, what I could find to connect all of these things. And for example, the magic system that I ran into was it basically very much so based on souls, the aura that souls produce, and then the names of these souls. And that is I guess the historical origins of all of those is in Celtic mythology, for example, fairies, fae, whatever you want to call them, they often deal with names in very interesting ways. You know, there are lots of stories of people having their names being stolen. There's even old wives' tales about how you're not supposed to call fairies by their names, otherwise they might steal yours, something like that. And you know, similarly, there's a lot of like really old religions, even going as far back as like out of the fucking Babylon, old ass Middle East, where there are situations around the true names for things, you know, not calling gods by their real names and calling them by epithets instead. Of course, there was a similar thing in Greek mythology where gods would have alternative names that you could call on them upon. And so it kind of worked from there, where I had a whole bunch of things that I wanted in the world, and I was trying to find ways I could link them all together to have one singular magic system.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I like the idea of a singular magic system, I guess.
I guess asterisk is it looks like a whole bunch of different magic systems.
Yeah. Would you, I guess, reveal that? Would that be like the big reveal, or?
No, not exactly. It's more like everything works off of the same underlying rules, which is that there are words in the language of the angels that have a certain power to them, and everything else, like all magic, is powered by souls at some point in the process. And so you get different types of magic depending on whose soul it is that's using the magic, and what it is you're doing with the words to shape it. So, for example, most humans live in like guilds, and basically what they're like old-timey. I'm trying to figure out how much I should talk about my world without just going on a tangent and spilling my entire lore.
I mean,
Bible.
we literally just had some of that last time, so that's
you can do that. We're here to hear that.
Sure. So there are a
Wow,
couple
but
main
not bad.
factions in the world. There are the churches who are run by the angels because it's called the world of the missing god because God is fucking gone, and the angels took over in his stead, doing their best to keep things as they believe they should be. You also have the guilds, who are people who are basically would be considered sinners by various of these churches, and they are magic researchers that live underground in the shadows of the angels, just trying to hide from them, often with the goal of just trying to discover as much shit as possible. um, you additionally have werefolk and other creatures of the night and monsters. These are people that would be killed on sight if they lived anywhere near the churches, and so they live out in the forests in their own abodes. This includes werewolves, this includes vampires, witches as well, those sorts of things. One of the other main groups is Fae. Fae kind of keep to themselves, don't tend to interact with humans often, partially because humans are scared as fuck of them because they're Fae.
Yeah.
They have all of the funny Fae magic that you could imagine, and they
we
all
had
live.
one moment where we literally walked into town. Someone asked, "Can you give me the time?" And the person then is like, "Oh yeah, it's this time," and then passed out and was just unconscious for the next hour because they gave that hour of their time.
Right. And so to for when it comes to humans who work for the churches, clerics, bishops, etc. I have a full list of the terms somewhere, just like everyone I could find from Christianity. But they basically channel magic from the angel that they work for, and so their magic is based on whichever of the angels that they are under. It's blessed upon them, and it's basically powered by the soul of the angel. Meanwhile, when you
Okay.
get to Fae, each Fae has their own custom magic, basically, that is tied to their soul and their true name that they can activate based on whatever it is. And so, like, for example, you can have some Fae where their whole thing is just the ability to control fire, and this might be something that's pretty common among dwarves. Or you have Fae whose ability is to, one that we encountered in a campaign is he can just like make an exact copy of any non-magical item. And this is just something that is custom to every Fae and is primarily and is very much so linked into their personality and who they are and what it is they desire in life. Then you have people in the guilds, and the way guild magic works is they operate off of runes, which are basically this one. There's a lot of world building behind it, but the basic idea is that Fae can't lie, and Fae blood is magic. So if you write something in the language of the angels using Fae blood, that thing will do its best to be true. And what you get is basically the guilds work off of rune magic, where they try to write out these very specific, like, this is the exact way that I want everything in this radius to exist. In order to turn lead into gold, you have to like write the exact parameters of, this is 2 pounds of lead, I want it to be turned into exactly 2 pounds of gold over this course of time with no other side effects. And that type of magic really comes down to a science where if you fuck up, you might get an explosion.
Yeah.
And you see how these are already 3 different magic systems that look completely different, right? You have, for example, clerics of the Church of Light, where they can fucking cast big ass light beams that send people to hell instantly. And you have Fae, where they can, you ask them a question and they steal an hour of your day. Or you have the guilds, where they're going to have like some sort of fun cannon which has a bunch of runes on it that when activated will fire a big magical beam. And even these are like 3 magic systems that are flavored completely differently, but at the end of the day have the same underlying rules that control them.
Yeah, that makes sense. That is cool. That is a neat, I don't know. I like that a lot. We got a hydrate and a posture check. Who wants to say it? I'll say the hydrate, actually. We're going in a circle. Hydrate your dagger. Everybody take a big drink of water. If you don't have water, go fill yours up, because when I drink, we all drink today. Draken's our reason for drinking. Welcome in, Draken. And a posture check, which I'm going to do right now. Hey, Chime. Fae are just JoJo stands. They're a little unique, or no, they're unique to each Fae. That makes sense. Hello, Longgrass. Yeah, I like that system, though. Like okay, so in my in my universe, it's not exactly similar, but I think you're going to understand why I'm making this connection.
Sure.
So I think I might have told you about this last week, Mezzo, but I'm not sure. I don't know who I tell things to. I have goldfish brain. So I have script magic, like sigil magic, I guess. It's done by writing, either in like magic circles or like lines of text, to chemically or physically change the world around them. Different effects will happen on the world, kind of based on themes, like certain alphabets will change, like the shape of like the molecules in a thing, you know, if it's written correctly. Certain script will change, though there's kind of geared toward, certain alphabets rather are kind of geared toward like health purposes, like it'll heal a broken bone because it accelerates healing or something like that. And each of these like alphabets are like, I'm calling them charts, I think, like it's just a chart of each like array of letters. Each of those will draw from the same like well of power, but they're kind of different magic, right? Does that make any sense? I hope that made sense.
Like different alphabets draw from different sources of power, but
they draw from the same like source of power. Like they all draw. I haven't decided what it is. I thought it was going to be like a literal, kind of like a magic volcano. Or like a magic geyser, that it sort of remotely draws from it. It kind of like goes out into the ether and they can draw the magic from all around them, kind of bullshit.
Right.
But
I guess could you talk about it in terms of your end goal here? Like what will the magic look like, ignoring the underlying mechanics?
It will either look like magic circles, which I mean have been done, but that's one of the derivative things I was worried about, or just like lines of text written directly on the object or like stamped onto it, that they're trying to change.
I mean, like the effects of it, not what it actually physically looks like. Like
the effects of it.
How your character is in a situation where they have to use magic to solve a problem. How do they do it?
Like healing a broken bone, the magic wielder would like scrawl or stamp on the person. Some of this stuff is kind of like the nitty gritty that I haven't gotten into yet, but they would either write or stamp on the person with a broken bone, a specifically carved or specific like shape, that is like instructions for what the world should do, like how the world should rearrange itself to accelerate the healing or to make the atoms move. So it's kind of like a, not magitech, but like magic science, I guess. In a non like health context, let's say there's a machine that a manufacturer has just built. They have a magician on staff that will write a magic circle or stamp it so that the metal in the machine won't rust as fast. Therefore, it's a more reliable vehicle. Is that too nitty gritty?
As in,
I just don't know if the whole thing, I don't know. I don't know if these are all ideas that I went too far with, or if...
No. So, I don't think there is ever... There's very rarely a limit at which you have done too much world building.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you only encounter that limit when it starts to interfere with your writing. And it doesn't sound that way to me, at the very least.
Okay.
I guess I will also say that when it comes to magic systems in general, the lower power your magic system is, the more you can get away with hand waving.
Yeah.
And also, there is a lot that depends on how much your magic interacts with the story. If your magic is going to be the main method of problem solving in most scenes, then you want to have that granularity and really understand how things work.
it's not going to be a problem solver so much as I don't want to say a backdrop. It will be a problem solver and a problem causer because it's a very,
Finicky.
well, it's that it has a controversial place in society. The users have a controversial place in society. So it's not that it's a backdrop. It's like I don't want to say it's a writing tool. I'm not sure what it is. It's that it's vital to the story to make it move, you know? And I guess that the magic could be anything that makes the story move forward. It could be, God, I don't know. It could be any, like, I don't know, group of people, I guess. But I, specifically just because of the way it's used and the way that these magic users are treated, it just, like I say, it has a controversial place in society because it does improve society. But I think, I don't know that I'd call that a backdrop of a story though, because it's more than a backdrop. It's a driving force.
Is this something you want to just say, like, we're workshopping this right now?
Yeah. Sure.
Cool.
I mean, yeah, I didn't intend it, but if you're open to workshopping it, I'm happy to.
Sure. I guess the first thing is, why don't you lay, like, all of the things that, all of the issues you've run into, all of the things that you don't have done yet. Like, what are the main problems you've had when working with the magic system?
Oh God, so many things. So many things. And Chime, yeah, it is. I don't want to say it's exactly like Witch Hat Atelier system. I do really like that manga though. Is it how powerful the magic is that dictates how much you can get away with, or how commonplace it is? I think it's how complicated of a command they're trying to write. So like healing a broken bone is probably like in the middle, whereas like, gosh.
I think
Moving a mountain is almost impossible.
Right. I assume this question is just like in general in terms of building out magic systems. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of both. When I said that, I'm referring towards like, if you're in, I don't know, let's say you have a world where everyone has access to the fucking Fairly Odd Parents, you have a wand and it can do anything you wish for, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You're going to have to do a lot of groundwork there to tell any sort of like serious narrative story where magic solves your problems.
Yeah.
Just because everyone has access to magic that can do anything, and your reader will constantly be asking, why didn't they use magic to do this? Why didn't they use magic to do this? Why didn't
they take the eagles?
Why did they take the eagles? Now,
fly, you fools.
Is an example where most of the magic is hand waved, but it's held together tenuously by the fact that the wizards and wizard books only really know like what max 7 spells that they use on screen with any regularity.
Yeah.
And so you can see how like they are able to solve most problems through methods that the readers are aware of.
Okay.
Now,
that's a really good point.
One thing that I'll note is that like because like Tape before had basically mentioned like, okay, you have this issue of with what you were saying. I'm going to scroll back up to the post. I worry that I allow too many fantastic things to exist in my world in order to let the cool things that I want to have happen. For example, if we have floating islands that exist without much real explanation, where, you know, a regular island in water would have worked, and says I want a high fantasy aesthetic, but also want lower fantasy drama.
I see.
And so I think that we've kind of managed to work our way around to discussing that here with with now that Tate kind of rephrased the question here.
Yeah.
Because I feel like this is the thing is like you can have like large world magic, but if you don't want your characters to be like to have access to it, there needs to be some good reason that they don't just have access to it, right?
Right.
Like in D&D, the wish spell exists. You can just make a wish. But the only people who can figure out how to make a wish spell work are like the sages who have spent a super long time and like studying it, and every time they make a wish with it, there's a chance that it like fucking blast their magic circuits and they can never use magic again.
Right. So the
Yeah.
people who use that high magic are also very well aware of the fact that they shouldn't use that high magic.
Uh-huh. And so like sometimes it's like, oh yeah, you should have restrictions, or just have it be like, for instance, with your floating island situation. Like I went and I said, okay, yes, I wanted my Valkyries to be on a floating island for Second Moon. And then eventually I was like, okay, I've got to justify why the island is floating.
Mhm.
And then that partially ended up with me coming up with the funny concept of, yeah, there's people where their whole job is literally just to like stand there with their hands on the ground in order to keep the island floating. And it's like that's a funny bit that kind of comes out of that. And it's like I said, yeah, they have the power, but the power is literally just that they're making the island light, and then ostensibly they've got like enough helium balloons to keep it in the air.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess I've got a couple things to say about that issue as well, of having the world have a lot of magic, but trying to prevent your characters from running into situations where the audience asks, why didn't they use that magic? I guess the first thing I would say is I 100% believe in the rule of cool, where you should prioritize whatever you think is cool first, and then work backwards to figure out how to make it fit. Because, yeah, I mean, as much as these stories are art, etc., they're also entertainment, and this is also like you want to write a story that you enjoy. However, the flip side of that is if you already have a lot of the groundwork set, and some things are like too generated, too built out to the point of being inflexible, you might have to start to cut things. And this is what I was talking about earlier, where sometimes once you get far enough into the process, you figure out that you have to figure out what your priorities are, and figure out that maybe I can't find a way to justify a floating island in my magic system, so I'm just going to leave it out. However, when you have, with the floating island example specifically, there's a lot of things that you could do there. Just based off what you said, it seems like your low to the ground players are going to have like the magic equivalent of a level 1 or 2 D&D character. Meanwhile, you have all of this crazy shit going on around them. I guess first of all, if your floating island is a one-off thing, there is a singular floating island, that is a story that you could tell for how it got there.
Yeah.
You probably don't need to do any heavy lifting to figure out why it's like that. You could just come up with a story that results in the island floating up there. I guess to be a little more specific and supply some ideas for you, a lot of systems I've seen have scenarios where magic used to be a lot more popular, or a lot more powerful, and it's kind of petered off over time. I believe this is the way Lord of the Rings' magic system works, where magic used to be way, way stronger, and it just kind of died out over time. I believe Dark Souls also has a similar magic system as well, where I don't know if magic used to be less powerful, but it definitely used to be different before the current age. I guess fucking Little Witch Academia is also the same, where magic used to be way more abundant than it is now. So if one of the things you're worried about is set pieces specifically, especially if they're things that would have existed a long time ago, like islands, that is something you could do where the magic just used to be stronger than it is now. Besides that, you could also just have a clear delineation between the magic that the world uses and the magic that the people use.
Okay.
And I guess just on top of that, you could also go the D&D route, where it's just like maybe people can get to the point of having that magical ceiling, but for the most part people don't, because it takes a lot of work.
Okay. I like the idea of the magic that the regular people use that avoids the like having maybe a few types of magic that people use, that like there's one that everybody's born with whatever type of magic, and you have to focus on it. You have to train to learn it better. That avoids those the implications that I mentioned earlier. Yeah, that's really, I like that.
I can say that like there's Never mind, I can't say anything because my brain just short-circuited halfway through that
All good.
sentence. So
You're
I
good.
would also say, in most fantasy worlds, if you want to include something, you do have the panic button of the gods simply willed it this way.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
If a god wanted a floating island, there just is a floating island right now, and you don't have to explain why it's floating at all. It just is.
Yeah, that's true. Tape says, what does Tape say? Because it just scrolled past. Tape says, regular people magic works well for me because one of the things I thought stood out was magical lighting systems and magic telephone systems. Yeah, you could make those with magic after 2 years of magical technical college. I love that.
What I was thinking was, it's like if you look at like a lot of the real life stuff,
magical
like,
HVAC.
If you talk about stuff like programming, for instance,
yeah,
I mean, I could just sit down at my computer and like overnight implement a thing that lets people pet me on my stream. This is a real redeem that does exist. And like, while this is ostensibly a thing that's just in VTuber Studio or whatever, I didn't have access to that because I'm not using VTuber Studio, and so I had to make it from scratch. And so you have like several different like ways that that's already functioning, where like M could just be like, oh, well, because I'm using an infrastructure that already comes with, we can add head paths as a built-in system. Like, just, you know, M can just sit down and click the one check mark and now it's enabled. I had to sit down and code a whole thing and had to learn how to code the whole thing before it was enabled.
You want to hear something extra infuriating? I couldn't figure out how to make the head paths work.
Perfect. See,
no,
it's even like that. You have like among the easier system, there's still problems.
It's that I'm an idiot. No, it's that it's like, not especially intuitive, and it's not like any program I've used before. So it takes me like 3 times as long to navigate it.
And so like it makes sense for things like, oh yeah, there's magic where it's like, oh well, anybody could do a thing if they knew how, but knowing how is not just like, oh yeah, this is real easy. It's like you said, you could do that after 2 years of magical technical college.
Mm-hmm.
Like you have to actually spend the time of learning the thing, and again, using the code metaphor, that's assuming there's documentation for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's also the flip side of that, which is, especially if you're working with low tech environments, like I think most fantasy does, where you've got like fucking middle-aged peasants because everyone loves medieval times. But if you're working in that sort of environment, you have to think about how much does magic affect people on a day-to-day basis anyway. If most of your peasants aren't, for example, encountering magical beasts, what impetus is there to learn magic if all they're doing is tilling the fields all day, and that's just what their life is? And so you kind of have to think about it in that regard too, where if there is some sort of barrier, even a small one, to learning magic, there is the magic useful enough, or is there enough of a need to use magic for people to strive to get there? And if there isn't, then you kind of just can hand wave away that most people don't particularly care about magic one way or another, since it doesn't affect their lives.
Yeah. Wiz, a redneck farmer isn't going to learn to code.
They weren't going to learn to code, but then John Deere made an impetus by trying to lock down all of their stuff, and so now the farmers are going to learn how to put Linux on their tractors.
Yep.
And
is that true? Wait,
yes.
Really?
Oh yeah. So in the non-stop forward march of capitalism, a lot of companies, including ones that cater to farmers, are trying to make it so people no longer own things. For example, specifically in the case of John Deere, new models of tractor come with software that doesn't allow you to use the tractor unless on top of purchasing the tractor you pay a subscription fee. And so as a result, there are entire like underground forums of farmers trying to figure out what the fuck a Linux is, so they can install custom operating systems and get around the subscription service to make the tractor work. It's god awful.
Oh my god.
There's also the right to repair stuff, which Wizard Memes also was mentioning, which was kind of like how this sort of started out, where literally the idea was you couldn't repair your own tractor. You had, like, even if you understood what the parts were, the tractor would lock itself down if you didn't put it into the special maintenance mode and you were an official John Deere licensed John Deere tractor repair.
Yep.
That's bonkers.
And
What the fuck?
It's not like
Yep.
we're gonna avoid this either. I mean, Tesla a couple years back made it so if you wanted, what was it? I think it was heated seats. You had to pay additional, even though every Tesla shipped with working heated seats. They just disabled it depending on if you paid the money. On top of them having a whole bunch of subscription services, and some other high-end car manufacturers have followed that. I forget which one, but I know there was an uproar recently because one of them basically throttled the top speed of your car depending on what subscription package you paid for, even though the underlying mechanisms of the car were identical. They literally just had a computer program that prevented your car from going above a certain speed unless you paid extra.
Sorry, you missed your car subscription this month. We're gonna have to throttle you to 40 miles an hour. No more freeway driving for you.
Exactly. No, that is exactly what it is, and it sucks ass.
Yeah, unironically, I mean, in the same vein, and I guess this one is a little less egregious, but still egregious. There are systems in place for newer cars where if somebody doesn't pay if you miss enough payments, the car will just shut itself off and wait for somebody to repossess it.
Huh.
We really do live in a society.
We live in a fucking society. Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Shout outs to Repo, Opera, whatever it's called.
But the best part is, according to tape, the good cracked John Deere software came out of Ukraine, so there's been a big push for right to repair since the war means less update to that. Oh my god.
Slava Ukraine.
Oh my god.
It's like they're actually trying to make it illegal to do that. Like Oats, that's a big part of what's going on with a lot of these like quiet lawsuits that are happening. That the people with lots of money are out here not trying to make it obvious these lawsuits are happening because it doesn't benefit them.
Mm-hmm.
But you have people out here who are like suing for their right to repair and stuff like that and other things, and then you have like you have it to where like companies, whenever they're selling cars, instead of selling you the car, they're actually selling you a license to use the car.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so awful.
Yeah, unfortunately, the talking to Oates here, the disabling the car thing is real because, I mean, if you miss enough payments, the car no longer belongs to you. They just get to repossess it. That's just kind of the case with most leases on things, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
Magic system with DRM, no!
Oh my god. So
Great. I was just gonna bring us back, but you can bring us back.
Well, I was gonna kind of bring us to something else. So really quick, first of all, how are we doing? Do we need a quick break or are we okay to keep going? I'm fine. I just want to check on both of you.
I am having a fantastic time.
I refilled my water bottle already, so we're good.
So you're good? Perfect. So I wanted to switch gears, not quite entirely, but I wanted to kind of see what both of your pet peeves or your world building unnecessary things that you find in world building, something that people add, or even something that you might have like used to do, like when you were younger or less experienced, that you think is unnecessary or annoying. I think describing or naming things with like a capitalized name is the worst. Like describing, let's say, calling spoons like
More
spoons with a capital. Yeah, exactly. Stuff that where you're speaking English otherwise, like perfectly normal English. Mm-hmm. And then there's this ordinary things that are called something fucking random.
Hang on, I'm getting the XKCD for it.
Oh, good. Of course there's a relevant XKCD.
There you go. 483.
Yep. Here we go. Probability book is good. Number of words made by author. Oh my god.
The elders, or
farmlings!
Farmlings, the children, with their clytoses, which are like swords, but awesome.
Farmlings, that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. Like, that is the worst. I hate that.
I wholeheartedly agree. And I also think one of my pet peeves is when authors go in the opposite direction and name things that are really important to the story some random English word but capitalized, like the test capitalized, which is something you'll see really often in like young adult dystopian fantasy, or
the culling, the happening,
the culling, the happening. I'm a big pet peeve of mine is just calling the capital city the capital, which
yup.
I know is something that happens in real life, but if every
The
book does
incident,
it, we're all
Tlarn.
the fucking capital. Yeah, the incident. I am not a big fan of this just because it's so generic. It makes this moment way less memorable. You know, if I'm talking about the book, all of a sudden I sound like a fucking lunatic.
And that's when the incident happened. I mean, you can tell me which incident. You don't need to like put a spoiler tag on it.
Right.
No. That's what it's called.
If you're talking, you should be able to, and of course, like there's a certain limit. You know, if you are naming everything in your book, your reader's eyes are going to glaze over, and they're not going to come away from like, oh yeah, we went to Zorthon riding our bungabus, and we met the fucking captain of the Zorthinian Crabacos, which is their word for guard, you know, that sort of thing. But like the flip side is just fucking like give your things descriptive names. You know, you can use 2 or 3. You don't have to come up with a word in a different language. You can use 2 or 3 words to describe a location, you know.
Yes. Name it after a person, even.
Name it after a person. Name it after where the thing is. You know, how many fucking cities and towns are just named Mountain River or some variation of that, you know, town that is by the river but as one word. Just
Butter says the Bungabuzz of Zorthon coming this fall. Oh my god.
We are preemptively copywriting all these names we're making up, so you cannot use Bungabuzz or Zorthon as your
my OC Bungabuzz do not steal.
Right. But replying to Tankfire, it's like, sure, calling things the Badlands or the Wastelands is fine, but you could also just call them like the name Wasteland, right? The fucking, I don't know, if you have the town of Zorthon, maybe surrounding
the Zorthon Outlands.
Yeah, the Zorthon Outlands, and all of a sudden that's a fantastic name. It describes what it is. Your reader is going to remember, even if they don't remember the name of Zorthon, they're going to remember that it's Outlands. It fits the world. It's fantastic. Please do that. Please do that.
Yeah. I Tlarn, to an extent, I agree. Non-descriptive names are best kept when characters are talking amongst themselves, and they all know they're talking about the same things, and you have already named it in your story. You can't just say, the first thing off the fucking rip, you're starting the story with dialogue and saying, hey, I heard that Bungaba 7 was going to the Outlands today. No, you don't start with dialogue in that case. Name the fucking Outlands. God damn it.
It's very simple, Umbrellas. Outlands are the lands that are outside. It's like a wabe. Like, have you not heard of a wabe? It's the same thing.
So can we talk about the Bungabubs? Like, are we gonna build lore for these? Because we already have the Zorthon Outlands and the Bungabubs.
They're spoons. We already answered that one.
No, I think they use spoons, and what do they call them, Mezzo?
I don't know. I thought that was the thing I said for that, but if it's something different, then I'm no longer. Like I feel like there's one thing I'm doing like purposefully in one of my like the story I'm currently writing is I'm doing the thing where it's like, yeah, no, I am just like, people are just like, yeah, you know, it's the city.
Mm-hmm.
And then what's going to happen is that there's just, like, one of the moments I have planned is specifically, you're going to, some of the main characters are going to run into, like, you know, upper class queen type who's going to be like, oh yeah, I came to visit, and then is going to say a name and the protagonist is going to be like, what the fuck is that? It's like, you know, the town you fucking live in? And they're going to be like, I just live here. I didn't realize there's a different name. It's the only city around for a super long time, so right. I didn't need to know the name.
Of course, as with any rule of writing, this is one that you can break if you know what you're doing. Mezzo clearly has a reason to. But please just, if you can't come up with a good name, just give them, even if you can come up with a good name, descriptive names are fantastic. Chime brought up, there are places that are just called things like South Creek. This is great. It tells you there's a creek nearby. It tells you it's in the South. Fantastic. Very memorable, realistic, beautiful.
Good and beautiful.
It's everything you need in a name.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think, okay, so by that same stretch, then on the other side of this coin, what do you think of words like not quite like Seussian level of made up words, but like Witcher, where it sounds vaguely fantasy, but it's not, it's an invented word. I am a sucker for them. Like if they sound cool, I'm a sucker for those words. And of course, besides Witcher, I can't think of any.
My
But
Disgusting umbrella. Disgusting. I hate
that
that.
rename the cardinal directions. Oh no, Dementor. We hate the wizard, but we hate the silly wizard school book. But I do like that word.
I mean, shout out. I feel a lot of those words are good because it's demented. What do? They make you demented. What are they? They're dementors.
Yeah.
I think there is a skill in choosing fictional names for things that are, if not descriptive, at least evocative of a description. And for all the shit that I give wizard book writer, that is something I think that is a skill I think she has across the wizard books, where places, characters, etc. are named in such a way that it's evocative of what they are, even to the point of being racist in some instances.
Yeah.
But,
Dang.
that is something that that is an element of skill that is present in her books. Just in terms of like, I love when books do that. Again, like it's just fantastic. Please give. It's an issue, especially if you're in a situation where you're reading a lot of books and you're the type of person who consumes a whole lot of media. Names blur together. It's impossible to remember everything, and so
Yes.
having access to a name that is if not descriptive, evocative of what the thing is being named. It's gravy. It's beautiful. It's fantastic. I love it.
Yeah.
In a similar vein, I
agree.
mean, like Tolkien in writing lore for his world mentioned that very often he would start with a name first and then figure out a thing to build around that name. The Lord of the Rings specifically started with him just writing the word in the house in the hill lived a hobbit, and then figuring out what a hobbit was from there. So,
that's cute. I like that.
Though I will say he was a little bit fucked up for like his whole like the backstory on the names of all the characters. That shit is fucked.
shout outs to Tom Bombadil. Let's go.
No, so like for instance, Frodo's name is Mara. That's his actual name.
What? Really?
The name Frodo is an actual real world Old English word that means something along the lines of wise. And the name Mara is the in-universe word that also has like a meaning of wise.
Right.
So he created in-universe words and then told us real-world analogs to those in-universe words.
Which, as fucking insane as it was, I think it's fantastic because he's giving us analogs to those names that we understand in our language. You know, obviously this might not be so much of the case now, but especially when what's his name, Tolkien was growing up, the meaning behind the name I think used to be a lot more colloquially understood. And so in that case, just like,
yes, mannequin,
fucking knowing that a dude is named Sam instead of knowing that a dude is named Grungus is a lot more evocative, you know, and also probably easier to remember that the dude is named Sam.
There's also the fucked up thing that like Pippin was short for, like, it was a nickname for something else entirely.
Yeah.
And even then he went through and made sure that the nickname was something that made sense for the nickname of the Old English word. In the same way that it had the nickname had the same meaning as the in-universe nickname word.
It's so fantastic. Silly. Like, what fucking Treebeard's name isn't Treebeard, but everyone calls him Treebeard, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, like, again, it's just like, sure, you can call him whatever his name is in the books, but it's way easier for a reader to recognize a big-ass tree with a beard as Treebeard.
Yeah, exactly. Rack, I agree. Okay, I got over the pandemic. I got very into conlangs. That's the term for fake languages. But, I'm Mezzo. I'm so glad. I joined a whole Facebook group. I joined the subreddit. I got so fucking into them, and just
I purchased Tokipona books.
Oh my god. You went harder than me. It's so hours of YouTube videos into how like they work and how to develop my own. I never got super far into it, but like into developing my own, but I have like a variety of words and like all the phonemes that I would need. Conlangs are so fucking cool. Rack, I agree with you wholeheartly. Sorry, I just wanted to like
Sure. Also,
I
a
wanted
big
to like
fan.
divert.
In fact, because one of the magic systems in Missing God is based on a conlang, that is something that I don't want to say I'm actively working on it because I gave up because shit's hard, but it's something that I was actively working on and will continue to be actively working on in the future.
And there's a bit that I've made that Clover is not too happy with, where I just say, yeah, actually the way that it works is that the conlang is different depending on your particular, like who you're playing with it at the time, so that way the pun works in whatever language you're playing in, and it's fine.
It requires a little bit more of an explanation, but like the magic works on shitty logic loops, basically, where you say something that is both true and false in such a way that the universe tries to make it fully true. And so like for Mezzo, that's it's the same sort of deal where it's just like fucked up. Anyway, do you have the software Polyglot?
Polyglot, no.
It is the premier conlang keeper tracker software. It is fantastic.
Okay.
I would highly recommend it.
Why did I spell it with 2 T's?
It basically
Polyglot.
it lets you create a full dictionary as well as conjugation rules that work automatically.
Oh.
And I think it even lets you like record sound samples of what words are supposed to sound like from there. So it's very cool.
Wow, that's really cool.
The curse has been shared.
I'm so excited.
Hell yeah.
Oh my god.
And yeah, it's free and open source, I believe. So
Of course it is.
If you don't have it on your machine, you should.
It's going on my machine right this second. Holy shit. I'm so excited. Wow. Okay, it's going on my machine right this second. I just love conlangs. I love getting really into the details. It's called Polyglot Chime.
And we do actually need to spell it out in chat because we cannot trust Chime to spell it herself.
The spell.
I've also definitely told Chime about this before.
What are your thoughts? Just unrelated. Again, I'm jumping around. What are your thoughts on like map making? Do you keep that kind of stuff in your head so you can leave it open when you go to like write something or I guess play? When I say play in the world, I mean we're all playing pretend here. Right. But when you go to do something in the world, whether that's play a session of a game or write in it. I know we talked about playing The Quiet Year, and I will make you do that probably next Worldbuilding Wednesday. But what are your thoughts on map making? Do you always do it? Do you never do it?
So I'll let Mezzo answer this because she loves making maps. But I will say this is another. It depends on your goals. Go ahead, Mezzo.
So whenever I was younger, and I would get bored in school, I would just draw shapes because shapes are fun.
Yeah.
That's how I got the first ever like map design that I was like, oh man, I love this. Or else I'll draw like, labyrinths or stuff like that. But here's the thing. I'm really bad about actually drawing maps for my worlds.
Yeah.
Mainly because like I tend to, because of the way I tend to do my world building, where like I start from a scene. A scene doesn't need a map. It just needs a location. And so it's real easy for me to come up with a bunch of locations, but then I have to figure out how they exist relative to each other. And that means I have to make that be consistent in some way. And usually the problem is that whenever I'm like in the moment to moment writing process, it doesn't matter where they are relative to each other. The only important thing is that they're not located at the same place, so that characters do have to travel, and I can, have events occur between them. And so as a result of that, I tend to end up like not making maps until someone is like, all right, do you have a map for this? Could you make a map? At which point I will then go, all right, sure. And instead of doing like the full world building, all right, let's do plate tectonic stuff, I do like the Final Fantasy map thing where I go, all right, I'm going to draw a bunch of squiggly shapes. I'm going to put locations on it. If you ask me how it got there, the gods willed it because of magic. And a wizard
There you
did it
go.
also. I just throw in every excuse simultaneously. It's fine.
And a wizard did it also.
A wizard did it also. Literally everything happened simultaneously and also one after another. Don't worry about it. I'm not paid enough to figure that out yet, so we'll worry about it later.
A wizard god, and also it's a snake that eats its tail. All came. They were one, like kind of like a god, kind of like a Father, Son, Holy Spirit thing. But don't worry about it.
And so but like as a result of like a lot of that, you know, I really love a lot of the Final Fantasy maps, but at the same time, they tend to not be super realistic because, you know, they're very clearly like, yeah, they put stuff together, they link things in such a way that you could go from point A to point B and it's fine. And so, but yeah, as talking about as to say there, it's like, yeah, having a map helps a lot for you to be able to say like, okay, going from point A to point B means they're probably going to visit these other places, which that might be a thing I want to cover, or it might not. I could just breeze past and be like, yeah, they restocked on the town in like one line, or I could be like, and they showed up into the town and happened to bump into bad man McNot bad guy who's wearing a fake mustache, and so the protagonists don't recognize him, but they get to have an important conversation that helps further the themes, and it's there's some of that stuff. But like, I don't know, I love maps. I like the pictures. I love it when books have maps in them. I don't reference them while I'm reading the books, but I look at them afterwards and before. I don't remember them while I'm reading the book. Just straight up, I do not remember the maps. Images do not stay in my head. Aphantasia real. But I do like looking at them. They're very fun.
Same.
Right. So now for me to jump in with my boring it depends. Right. So I think there's a couple layers to anything in writing, right? Any quote unquote rule where it's just like, what is the bare minimum needed to get a story across? And then one step up from that, what should you do to get a good story together? And then one step above from that, it's like, what are the limits for how far you can go before it starts to detract from things? And I think the bare minimum is just knowing vaguely where all of the locations that you are going between are relative to each other, what the distances are, etc. If you are working with a story where your characters aren't moving around a whole bunch, then that's fine, right? If people are mostly staying in the same city, where the church is relative to where the supermarket is probably isn't going to come up all that often. Or also, if you are doing an urban fantasy story where things are taking place in the real world, then all of a sudden you don't really have to worry about maps because those already exist. You know, if you say that they went from New York to Philadelphia to do whatever it is they're doing, people have a relatively good understanding, or can get a relatively good understanding of how that journey is happening. Meanwhile, like one step above from that is if you are having characters that are going on a journey in a custom world, I think that it is a very good idea to have, at the very least, like drawn out the relative locations of everywhere that your characters go. Just draw out their journey and draw out all of the things they pass by on the way through their journey, because this just gives you a fantastic way to, for example, avoid timing issues where it takes them 5 days to get there and 2 days to get back, just because the story needed that to happen. But this like prevents that from occurring. But then like one step up from that, like I love it whenever a story with a journey has a map and you can trace the journey through the map.
Yeah, I love that too.
One of my favorite things out of the Aragon books which I read.
I love the Aragon books. Those were
fucking
so
forever ago
good.
at this point. But like, if you remember, the Aragon books had a map right at the start, and through each book, that map developed. So you saw further and further towards the east, and you got to see like eventually, oh, they moved past the mountains. Now we get to see what's past the mountains, and I just loved going back and forth and seeing where the characters moved along their journeys. And I think that works. It is, I think, imperative if you have a story that heavily
Wiz, you shut your damn mouth. Sorry, they were talking about blasphemy.
There
was
What
blaspheming.
movie?
The fucking Aragon movie. Sorry, I apologize for interrupting. I can't stand blasphemers. Go on.
Yeah, there was not a movie.
But yeah,
Sorry.
I think no, it's all good. Yeah, I think it is imperative if you have a story that revolves around characters interacting and moving through the world, that at the very least you have a map that you can follow, and it gives you the relative locations of everything. Of course, if you are GMing something that like a tabletop game that will go on longer than a one shot, I think you need a map. Because if your players go somewhere you don't expect them to, you need to know at the very least what is probably over there. You know,
Well,
I'm not
Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, I'm not saying like you need to have every city named, and like every individual forest named, and know every crag in every bluff, but you need to be aware of the general locations of things. So if your players say, okay, we're done with the city, we want to go north, you know that, okay, this is a forest and there's likely a fucking hag in the forest, you know?
Yeah,
That sort of thing.
yeah. With the whole map thing and chronicling the map, whenever I write out stories, or at least when I outline stories rather, I have always struggled because I try to put things on a timeline, and not every story is going to be like an adventure, but on the like a big, like an epic adventure across a continent or across the world. But if I stay in like in the area that the characters are adventuring in, you know, I mean, because every story, like, you know, has an arc and things take place in different settings, and just like detailing where people will physically be, even if it's just spots around a city. They go to an office and they discover this news, and they come back home and they whatever. I think that might, I just, when you mentioned that, it instantly like just brought to mind like, oh my god, this like solves the thing I've been struggling with in my writing. I think that might be more effective than trying to lay it out on like a timeline, because I always hit so many more spots in the timeline like method of outlining than I imagine. Now I want to try this to say for sure, but I already have a map. I'm a map person because maps are fun. Maps are cool. I think that might be more effective, because I had an idea of where I want them to end up. That goes back to Mezzo's, like having the scenes written out. You kind of have like, okay, I have these destinations, this is the path, and here's what I can have along these destinations, or here's what I can have to bridge these physical gaps. That's kind of a cool, sorry to derail. That's
not derailing. That's what we're here for.
It's really cool. Yeah. I'm excited to try this. I'm all I have to do is just go back into Incarnate and mess with my, like, print out my map again so that it's not all marked up. My current iteration of my map, so marked up, and I didn't save. I saved over the original, and it is a disaster. Classic. It is a disaster. I love Incarnate though for map making. I thought I was gonna switch over to something else, because I had a friend at the time who was using something else. Incarnate is just so good for map making. It's very nice, and it's very like, it's very what you see is what you get. It's very good.
Yeah. I will say that I do think map making is one of my weaknesses, just because
really?
I'm sitting there stricken by decision paralysis.
Have you done the dice thing before?
I have. I've tried it. I guess the issue comes from me. I always like it when every one of my decisions is a decision. You know, like there's a reason that I put this mountain here because it's important to the story, or there's a reason that I put this volcano here, and that is very much the way that I write. And I guess when it comes to map making and actually building the physical world out, that doesn't work so well, because sometimes the world just is the way it is because it is, and not necessarily everything has a reason behind it.
It'd be cool if there was like a procedural, like Incarnate, but with a procedural generation kind of thing. Because not only would that add to some realism, like, hey, mountains are going to spawn this way naturally. But if you had like, okay, I have this mountain, I have this plateau, I have this river, and I have these 3 cities, make it work. And then the procedural generation could just do it. Oh, Brella says it exists. God damn it. Brella, give us the thing.
Yeah, give us the beats.
Give us the thing. Because I'm going to pull it up and play with it.
Hell yeah.
Just put down the things that you're like, this has to be here, and then go from there.
Yeah,
like,
that's what I'm saying.
I've seen people playing with like stuff that like does plate tectonics, procedural generation kind of stuff. And I've seen people playing with it, and I don't know exactly how much of it is like, oh yeah, you can just like put down features and be like, yeah, now make it work. But like I've seen them do it and be like, oh yeah, well you can mark like, oh these sections are going to be continents eventually, so you can mark that one down as it starts going, but the rest of it is like,
So, Umbrellas brings up something. If you don't want to railroad it on accident 2, you got to build it using a blooming effect. Which, if I understand correctly, and if you want to bring up MS Paint again.
Yeah, give me just 2 seconds. One Momo. It's not being super friendly.
Oh, you were like already moving yourself out of the way before even said.
Yeah, I was kind of like I was gonna pull up the Asgard's map thing, but I want to see this.
Right. So I think this is something that is more important in world building for a tabletop game, or I guess a game in general, where you are having the players encounter the world in distinct chunks that are like separate and discrete. That in order to save yourself time and headache, the way you should build things out is like, so for example, your players are, and I guess at this point you could imagine this is like a physical map that represents the actual world, and your players are starting here in this location. Generally, the way you want to build the map around it, and also like the things that are on that map and the locations and the stories behind the things that are on that map, is that in the immediate circle around your players, what they can reach really quickly, and presumably what they're meant to reach over the course of this specific campaign, you should have all of this pretty well thought out. You know, you should know the major locations in the city that they're in. You should know the like major set pieces that they're going to be involved with, etc. And then the deal is that as you go further and further away from the center of the player action, you are able to sort of have things be a little blurrier as you go further out. You know, and speaking in D&D terms, if it's literally like, oh yeah, it would take them, you know, maybe an hour's worth of travel in terms of encounters, etc., to get out here, then you can be a little looser than that, because you know they're not going to get there. It's going to take some amount of time to get there, and that gives you time to prepare, etc. And once you go further out, you can be even looser with the world building in general. Just because, you know, okay, there's no way they're going to get there this session, so I only need to know very vaguely what's out there. So if they ask, I can tell them. You know, if they ask an NPC what's over here, I can make it up on the spot. And I think that is a very efficient way of building your worlds, because this allows you, you know, let's say Paint is being god-awful when it comes to the colors here, but you know, you get to the point where your players are exploring and they end up somewhere around here in this inner circle, right? And they're getting really close to seeing that external area where, because what you don't want to do is have your players bump into, and I guess this is more important in narrative fiction where you're like writing stuff out ahead of time. You don't want your audience to reach the edge of your world building and find that there's nothing there. And so as a good GM, once your players reach this sort of midway point where it's outside of what you have prepared, what you have prepared down to the letter, still within what you have vaguely prepared, but entering what it is they're doing next, or what it is you don't have yet, you just you have time between sessions to build the next circle. And then all of a sudden you have a new circle around that. And all of a sudden the areas of what you don't have yet have moved. But the fantastic thing about this is as your characters are moving, and I think this is where this is useful in a setting where you're writing the entire narrative ahead of time, like for a novel or a comic or something, is if you're doing this as your characters move through the setting, you're going to end up with so much world building for everything around here before you even realize it. And all of a sudden, oh, I have an entire map here, done already. And all I had to do was follow my characters and figure out what surrounds them as they move.
Yeah.
And I made a dick.
Did you mean to do that?
I did not mean to do it, but I made a dick.
Good job.
Thank you.
Very proud of you. I wanted to look really quickly at Asgar's
go for it.
generation. Okay, here we go.
I feel redeemed in Umbrella saying that that was in fact what they were talking about.
Okay, I'm scooting you over just a teensy bit. And then I'm gonna scoot me over just a teensy bit. Mezzo can stay there.
It doesn't matter how far you scooch me, the ears will still be a problem.
They will be. I'm not saying you're a problem.
I am.
That's very mean. Okay. Click. Oh, wow. Now how do I move? No, you can move like this.
Hang on, before I'm offended, do you mean that you are a problem, or you are saying that I'm a problem?
You're not
I think
a problem.
we're both problematic, Mezzo.
Neither of you are problems. Edit Glacier. Is this the top of the world? Is this a Pangea? That it is.
Looks like it.
What do I do? Is this just generated? What do? Oh, here we go. Excuse me. Wow. Wow.
Wow.
Wow. How do you...
Mezzo, I feel like you've walked me through this one, haven't you?
I don't think I've touched this one.
Oh.
I mean, okay, let's put it this way.
Okay,
It's
how do
entirely
we...
possible I formerly understood something about it at one point, but also information enters and leaves my head at phenomenal rates.
Jimmy. Wait, where's the... I wanted to see...
Oh, it was Chime who walked me through it.
provinces. No, not provinces. I want, like, places of interest. Whoa. Are towns on here? No, these are just places of interest. Huh. Illusory Mirage. Ooh,
Just like me,
battlefields.
for real.
This unmissable circus. It's unmissable. Okay.
Good luck
This is
missing it.
cool. Yeah, seriously.
You'll fire an arrow, doesn't matter where, and it ends up hitting the circus, and then you have to pay them money for it.
Okay.
It's pay reparations.
Provinces? No. I just want to see towns. States?
Okay, Chime is very angrily saying in chat that she was the one who walked me through it, which makes sense, actually.
Oh, and you can regenerate here. Cool. Wow, this is so cool. And I bet, well, I don't know if it's realistic. I bet it's realistic. I imagine.
It's realistic enough that only like the people that are like really into the plate tectonics will care.
Hey, remember,
do zoom in
realism
to see
doesn't
the
count.
towns.
Suspension of disbelief does.
True.
Now, can you edit this like piece by piece, or are you stuck with it? I have seen 4% of the options. What does that mean? You can edit it. Of course. Of course you can. Oh my god.
This looks like you're gonna be spent like this looks like your next stream is just gonna be you playing this as your game.
I'm so excited! No, because I'm not gonna do map building on stream. Somebody I don't like does that.
Well,
God, I feel that one.
You could instead be the kind of streamer that you do like, who does it.
I could. Oh no, I deleted a whole. Oh fuck. There's no control Z. I think so. Fuck, I deleted the coastline.
See ya, tape.
I did a global warming. Did tape head out?
Tape
Maddie,
head out.
thanks for advice. Yeah, absolutely, tape. It was really good to have you. Okay, so I've fucked up. And that's fine.
See, you can just generate another one. It's fine.
Yeah, it's
Clearly,
fine.
this is just the void. It's just there. It's an actual map feature where nothing exists in that area.
Wiz, I thought the same thing. It's like, oh, our coastlines are going away too. That's so funny. I just did a global warming. Okay, how do I regenerate that? Tools, coastline? Regenerate, nope.
Now there is always the extremely funny way that you do it.
Yeah.
Which is you just open up Minecraft on a new seed and just go, yep. Start placing down markers as you go.
That's fair.
There actually is a tool called World Painter for Minecraft, which I've used to make Minecraft worlds in the past, but it seems very similar to this tool where you're able to paint like biomes and mountains, etc. And I wonder if there's something to like taking a world that you make in Asgard or some similar map maker and trying to port it into Minecraft just to get a feel for what it's like.
That would be really... There's got to be a utility for that. Mezzo, you want to make that? I'm kidding.
I mean, how much?
No, I'm a VTuber, Mezzo. You think I have money? If you wanted to build, if you wanted just like a random person to like basically like commission a program, how much would you charge? I've always wondered that.
How much will you pay?
I can't personally. I just want to know, like, you've got to have like, I don't know, rates, right?
Yeah, my first thing I do is I ask how much are they willing to pay for it. Then I think about how long I think it'll take. Decide if I think that's fair or not. And if I don't, then I'll maybe come up with another thing then. But
the issue is program is a very, very wide term. If you're asking one of us to build you a website that can just like host all of your fucking social media, that could be done in an afternoon. I can build my own
website. I mean, I
can make a website in like 30 seconds and just be like, here you go.
Card. And
it would look great.
Right. But like for example, like the fucking map to Minecraft thing, for Mezzo that would take probably learning a couple new APIs and libraries because she hasn't worked with these sorts of tools before, on top of the actual work of creating the thing, which I don't think would be too bad because it would just be...
I mean, the real problem is the fact that it looks like this thing is generating vector stuff, so we would have to decide... we basically have to, at some point, say, like, okay, because, you know, we're going to have, like, this coastline occupies 30% of a block.
Yeah, that's I mean, that's how I would do it. Or I would have it generate, like...
How does it... Can I put a slab in there? Do I put a slab? Is it only full blocks? There's a lot of questions like that.
I think this tool specifically is granular enough that you could say, like, like, this represents however many meters, and then it'll also tell you what biomes they are. So at the very least, you could block for block convert everything into what biomes they're meant to be, and then convert everything into elevation levels, and then actually change what the topsoil looks like. I think it's more than doable.
Yeah, no, it's doable. It's just a matter of learning all of the whatever tools, because like stuff clearly exists, and as long as you can export this map in any reasonable way, it would make sense to be like, yeah, convert this thing into, like, since it has all this information that comes with it, into Minecraft map. But yeah, at the same time, it's like, I don't know how long that would take, and if somebody's gonna like just pay me for me to do it for them to have, like, I don't know, ostensibly I'd want to charge by the hour, but
yeah, that would make sense.
Buzzing again.
You're a little buzzy.
Yeah.
Oh, I realized I was looking at other things. Yeah, just a little bit, Brella.
Gonna go refill water real quick.
Yeah, please do. I guess. What's Clover? Oh my god, I'm so sorry. Oops, that's the wrong browser source. No, I wanted a window capture. There we go. Actually, Clover's not here right now. He, make it so that he pops up from behind the, slide. And he'll slide up. When he comes back, I'll do that. There we go.
Wait, did we even do the hydrate or dihydrate that's there?
Did we? Let's do it again. Hydrate or dihydrate. Everybody take a big drink of water. Can all water go fill yours up because when I drink, we all drink today. Somebody's our reason for drinking.
Draken. Who else?
Draken's our reason for drinking. Welcome back, Draken.
Draken literally had me add a what's it called?
Mm-hmm.
Hydrate redeem to my channel.
I'm really glad. I'm really glad.
The hydration doctrine is being spread.
I didn't mean to make that one go that direction. I wanted to make it look like we were popping up from the desk. But I made Clover go up, and I'm gonna leave it like that. It's silly.
He just scrolls up. Talk about an elevator pitch.
No!
Oh my gosh. Hang on. Here, I'll fix it even better.
As an aside, as funny thing is happening here.
Oh, I'm back. Thank God.
While speaking of world building, I've been working on this one Minecraft world like on and off with just like trying to build things, and it's so funny opening it up after I haven't been on it for a while and just like walking into a spot and going, "What in the world was I doing here? I completely forgot this entire building existed."
Yeah.
I remembered this other thing I was working on last time, but I forgot that I made this whole farm, and then I realized, oh, I didn't even finish it, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
Life really is an experience.
It really is, you know? So we are coming up on 3 hours, but before we hit it, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of gnomes do you prefer in fantasy settings? Like garden gnomes, or like cobbler gnomes, or like genius gnomes, or like, you know, that kind of thing. Which ones are your favorites?
I think the correct answer is that gnome should be exclusively used as a racial slur.
Oh my god!
I agree completely.
Anyway, that's my whole joke I came up with on the fly.
So-
I'm sorry. This is why I shouldn't be allowed to make jokes that fast.
I don't know if I in particular have a favorite type of gnome.
Yeah?
I will say this is another it depends situation where it's like if your setting has dwarves and your dwarves are already like the industrial, we build all kinds of gadget types of people, then you probably want to lean more magical with your gnomes because that niche is already taken. You know, meanwhile, if your elves are little people that build toys, then you're probably not going to also have cobbler gnomes.
Fair.
I think it depends 100% on what else exists in the world. In general, like of those, probably my favorite is just like the Tinker gnomes, where they have stupid, ridiculous like gadgets that they put together and often explode themselves with.
There's a specific website I'm thinking of with that their version of the gnomes is really good, but also I don't think I can mention the website in polite company, so...
Yeah?
Is this a webcomic?
Yeah.
I think I know the webcomic. Okay, cool.
Do I know the... Somebody want to message me the webcomic? Also, it's my channel. You've seen my channel, right? Like,
no, it's not even that webcomic. I know the webcomic Mezzo's talking about. There's two webcomics that are yeah, it's that webcomic.
Tell me both of them!
Order of the Stick. Order of the Stick is the one I was thinking of until I realized that Mezzo has a dirty mind.
No, we can mention Order of the Stick in polite.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out why you couldn't mention Order of the Stick. What the fuck happened to Order of the Stick? It's fantastic.
No. But yeah, no, if you're fine. The webcomic Ogloff features gnomes. One notable invention they created was a chariot that goes so fast it gets there before you do.
Oh. I haven't heard cats.
The question is, what happens if you're riding on it? Whenever they were asked that, their brains exploded.
Oh.
So
yeah.
Wow.
Kithkin are halflings. That's different.
Yeah, Kithkin are Magic's halflings before they actually added halflings to the game. Kitkin are a little different though, because I believe they have a hive mind. It's called like the Thought Weft or something, where they all alert each other whenever danger happens because the rest of the plane is out to kill them.
Mhm.
And then whenever everything turns evil, then it becomes an actual hive mind.
Okay. Thank you for answering. I wanted to end with a silly, cute question.
Hell yeah.
This was fun. Let's do this again. Actually, next time, I'm dragging you both into a game of the Quiet Year. I would love if Chime would also be on. Chime, we'll
You're
talk.
available.
Probably a couple weeks or a few weeks, but we'll talk about it.
Yeah. I'm sad we have to end. I'm having a good time here.
I'm really glad. Well, the good thing is we're gonna do another one as long as you both are down.
2 weeks.
Yeah. Couple weeks, yeah. But oh, I gave a shout out to Mezzo earlier. Can we get a shout out to Clover? And is there anyone either of you would like to go say hi to? I have a couple people we can raid into, but I wanted to see if, because you two are guests, if there's anybody you'd like to raid into.
Doesn't seem like anyone I know is streaming.
Okay. That is just fine. Mezzo?
I've got one that I'm a fan of. She's playing Zelda Randomizer.
Okay, yeah. So you want to type that name into our chat?
Yeah.
Yeah, give me a second to pull them up so that I can put in the raid message when we raid
No
it.
dick.
Oh my
no
god.
balls,
Oh my god.
and probably no butthole since this guy feeds on radiation.
Thank you, Wiz. I appreciate it immensely. All
I
right.
think that's now required. Is that the raid message now? Is that how this works? Or
No, we have other raid messages. What are we gonna call it? Worldbuilding
dick.
Wednesday?
No
Oh my
balls.
god.
And probably no butthole since
Worldbuilding?
this guy feeds on radiation.
What are we gonna call it? Pirate Rabbit Taylor raid.
Hell yeah.
Is that what we want to do? It's like puppy monkey baby.
I mean,
Raid of the Rings is cute, Butter.
Raid of
Do
the
we wanna-
Rings. I mean, the
See
real
what
answer is
this.
we're spending the beginning of this setting up, just talking about world building. Next time that we do this is when we're going to start building a world, parentheses map.
Building the world's map. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Let us go ahead and raid into Arborelia. Everybody here. First of all, Clover, Mezzo, thank you both for being here. I had an excellent time. I'm excited to do this again.
Hell yeah. This is fun.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Everybody, please go be polite in Arborelia's chat. If we're at like a level like 8 or 9 on the weird and horny scale, please bring it down to a 1 or 2. We want to be good representatives of the community.
It's so funny to me. How you have
What?
to give this disclaimer every time you do a raid.
I like
what-
making sure we're being normal. I just don't want somebody to go out and be weird. And I want people to I know sometimes we get weirdos. We usually catch them and ban them, but you never know. And I just want people to know and be like that I'm being truthful when I say I talk to my chat about these things.
I gotcha.
Go be normal in Arborelia's chat. Be good representatives of the community. Use the raid message, Raid of the Rings, which I think is very cute. Thank you, Butter. And I'll be back again tomorrow with whatever the fuck I'm playing. Death Stranding with Oni? Yes. That's what we're doing tomorrow. Be good, feed yourselves, drink some water, and we will see you next time. Bye!
Yeah.
See ya.